Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll start finding seats, we'll start this in about a minute or so. Call the Destin City Council August the 1st meeting to order, please. And we're going to begin, if I can have Reverend Caleb Miller of the Emmanuel Anglican Church to come forward. And everyone stand, please, and lead us in prayer. Sir, please stand. Yeah.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, in your word you have given us a vision of that holy city to which the nations of the world bring their glory. Behold and visit, we pray, the cities of the earth. Renew the ties of mutual regard which form our civic life. Send us honest and able leaders. Enable us to eliminate poverty, prejudice, and oppression, that peace may prevail with righteousness and justice with order, and that men and women from different cultures and with differing talents may find with one another the fulfillment of their humanity. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send down upon those who hold office in this city, Mayor Fisher, Councilman Braden, Councilman Destin, Councilman Dixon, Councilman Foreman, Councilman Marler, Councilman Morgan, and Councilwoman Ramswell, the spirit of wisdom, charity, and justice, that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices to promote the well-being of all people, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At our last meeting as citizens, Steve Minchell urged us to express our gratitude and appreciation for our law enforcement officers, who are all too seldom recognized for their contributions to the safety and well-being of our community. It is appropriate for us to take time from our usual business to honor the men and women we ask to enforce our laws and provide protection to the citizens of Destin. We are honoring them for their service as they confront the dangers and uncertain situations that can be presented at any time of day, as evidenced by the two recent shootings in Dallas and Baton Rouge, in which gunmen killed and injured several police officers. These officers play a vital role in safeguarding our rights and our freedoms of our residents and our visitors. They treat all people equally and would not hesitate to risk their own lives in order to save the lives of others. I would like to show our appreciation with a proclamation. And I see the sheriff has arrived. If I could ask him and all the group with him, if they don't mind, to come up to the front and meet me at the podium. Whereas there are over 900,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office. And whereas these brave men and women put their lives on the line to defend our citizens against violent crime and work to keep our communities safe. And whereas they work long and unusual hours, and many of them give up precious time with their families to carry out their duties, often risking their own personal safety. And whereas their diligence, courage, and dedication to their job should be an inspiration to all citizens in developing respect for these officers and the laws they enforce. And whereas the well-being of the City of Destin residents is preserved and enhanced as a direct result of the vigilance and law enforcement officers that serve our community. Whereas it is because of these dedicated men and women that we have the freedom to live our lives in peace as our nation faces trying times, it is essential that we support, respect, and understand the difficult tasks that these law enforcement officers face every day while protecting our liberties and sometimes at great cost. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the mayor and city council of the city of Destin do hereby publicly salute the service of the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Office and call upon all citizens, private institutions, businesses, and schools to take a moment to show their appreciation for the men and women that protect our great city. Be it further proclaimed that we honor our law enforcement officers for their dedication and hard work in protecting our residents and visitors for their vital role in maintaining peace and tranquility in our community. And I apologize a little bit that it takes a national crisis for us to remember how much we appreciate the Sheriff's Department. Sheriff Ashley, would you like to introduce the folks with you?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council and citizens, for the support in this proclamation. We don't all necessarily share the same values, but we all believe that we have our laws for a reason, that rape, robbery, murder, and lying, stealing, and cheating are bad, and we want to prohibit those things in society, and we ask law enforcement to go out and represent us in that regard. And that's what these men and women do, is they go represent the citizens in enforcing the law. And we can't do that without the authority of the citizens, and we thank you for recognizing these folks in law enforcement today. And I think you all know who Captain Ted Paco is, Sergeant Brian Parkton, Investigator Rich Cooper, and a very new member that started today. He's replacing Under Sheriff Don Adams, Under Sheriff Steve Harker. Just retired from the FBI not too long ago, and will be our new Under Sheriff. So these are the men that are here today, and thank you for recognition.
Thank you for all you do. That's not a bad way to start your first day with a standing ovation, is it?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We certainly understand if you need to get back on the streets. Feel free to leave. Second, we have a presentation by Sarah Yelverton. Did I pronounce that correctly? Executive Director of the Homeless and Housing Alliance. And the light's already lit, so if you'll repeat your names and addresses, please.
I'm Sarah Yelverton, and I'm the director of the Homelessness and Housing Alliance, and we're located in Fort Walton Beach. Our office is 207 Hospital Drive.
Thank you. Ted Corcoran, representing the Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce. I thought it would be great to start off chronologically so the new members of our council could get a feel for the last 10 years of what has been happening in Okaloosa County. Actually, I was on the council from 04 to 08. I sat right there where Parker Destin is, wedged between Larry Willagees and Dewey Destin, 4 of the most fun years of my life, as you can well imagine. I still wear the watch that was given to me when I left. It's very proud. So during that time frame of 2004 to 2008, I was moving to the Fort Walton Beach Chamber of Commerce in 2006. And that is when the beginnings of the delving into homelessness in Okaloosa County occurred, just 10 years ago. It was the first time in 2006 where the city of Fort Walton Beach began to see some panhandlers and other folks in the downtown area, and the community said, how can we handle this? At that time, they'd not made their way to Destin. And what had happened was the county got together with all the police and the nonprofits and the churches, et cetera, and we had 2 forums throughout 2006. And as a result of those forums, what had occurred was the forming of an organization called Continuum of Care. A group of folks, which now Sarah's in charge of, which has changed its name slightly in the last period of time. But that was a group, again, just 10 years ago, actually probably 9 years ago, that was committed to addressing that issue. And in the last 10 years, we have also been involved, and I think the key component that everyone on the council and everyone in the audience needs to know is that there is more than just one slice of homeless. There's lots and lots of layers and layers of it. You break it up into those that are the panhandlers and truly the ones that our community is trying to help, and those are the ones who are down on their luck. So we thought if I kind of caught you up with that, Sarah would fill you in on some of those demographics on that component, and then I would come back and share where the community is progressing in our progress. So, Sarah?
Like Ted said, there is a group, the Okaloosa Walton Homeless Continuum of Care, and my agency, HHA, or the Homelessness and Housing Alliance, is the lead agency for that group. And that group does consist of business and civic leaders, community advocates, other nonprofits, hospitals, jails, schools, and we have a list of responsibilities that we have to take care of every year and submit back to the federal and state government. We have to do an annual point-in-time count, which is where we literally do a census of all the homeless living in Okaloosa County and Walton County by going out and tracking them down in a 24-hour period and filling out a survey. Then we compile that data, we report it back to the federal and state government, and then we also use it for our own advocacy and to determine what resources are needed in our community. This year we counted 629 homeless in Okaloosa and Walton counties. So last year, in January 2015, we had 117 homeless veterans. This year we've decreased that number to, we only had 34 in the January of 2016. So when we aligned all of our efforts to try to eliminate veteran homelessness, and we literally, all the grant-funded providers, all the people working with us in the community focused on that one priority population, and we were able to decrease it by such that amount. So now we're in the process of claiming functional zero, which doesn't mean that we don't have any homeless. It means all the homeless veterans that want to be housed, that are eligible for housing, have now been placed into housing. We know we have quite a few chronic homeless, 236 of the people that we surveyed this year meet the definition of chronic homelessness. They are also the population that costs our community the most money, and they're also the hardest to respond to with services and housing. They've been on the street an incredibly long time. They have really high service needs, and a lot of them aren't capable of getting out of homelessness on their own. And I'll turn it back over to Ted for a second to talk about his new project.
So as you've heard from Sarah, there's 2 divisions here. There's the panhandler, who's the most present in downtown Fort Walton Beach. There's anywhere between 25 and 50 of them at any one point in time, yet it seems like they're all over. Here in Destin, there seems to be 20 or 25 of them. So if we compartmentalize those for just a second, let's talk about those that Sarah just mentioned, over 600 homeless people in Okaloosa County. As you delve into this whole world, it's absolutely amazing that this can occur. And of those 600, half of them or more are kids under the age of 18. So what you're looking at now is the community, after 8 years, has finally, the solution was, can we get a building, can we get a building, can we get a building? And as you hopefully have been keeping up, there's a building in North Fort Walton Beach, up near the fairgrounds on North Beale Extension, the city of Fort Walton Beach's former waste treatment plant. 8 acres are being converted to a homeless resource center. And the first phase of that opens up on August 11th. And that first phase is what is being called a cold night shelter. If you follow that, on the cold nights in the wintertime, there are 7 days a week certainly, and currently there are 7 churches that each take care of those individuals. Well, this coming season, all of those same churches will now take care of those folks at this one-stop building. And therefore, all folks in Okaloosa County will be eligible to get to that facility. So then you'll have other phases that will include dormitory-type settings for family and veterans, et cetera. So the encouraging part, council members and residents of Destin, is something's happening in Okaloosa County. August 11th, it opens. I'll invite you at 8:30 a.m. that morning, and the issue is being resolved, which is wonderful, or being worked on at least. Now, the other process was regarding the chronically homeless that Sarah mentioned. And what we're doing there is we're working with the police department, both in the city of Fort Walton Beach and the sheriff's department, to come up with some stronger ordinances. We haven't been able to do a lot of strong ordinances because the concept is we have no place to bring them but jail. Now that there will be a place to bring them, there'll be an opportunity for more ordinances within the security of our Okaloosa County. So we met with Carice, and she was indicating what's going on, and that's why we're here today to tell you who may be new to the component that Okaloosa County is working on that. Our chamber, working with their organization, working with all the nonprofits, are collaborating to address this issue, and it'll be open to everyone in Okaloosa County. Questions?
Ted? Hi.
Hello there, nice to see you.
I want to thank you and Sarah so much for coming out this evening. And the one point that I did want to make with the council is that you have invited Destin, the city of Destin, to the table. You folks have been working so hard and tirelessly over this on the past 10 years. And as we go forward and the ordinances are being created, that Destin can be part of the solution along with the rest of y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, let's be frank, it wasn't an issue in Destin 10 years ago. I'm not sure when it became an issue, but it became an issue in the last couple of years. And as a result of Carice coming into town, we have a meeting next week, and Destin is now around the table. And around that table are the law enforcement, both on the county level as well as the cities, the nonprofits, the churches. So what you have is all of Okaloosa County getting together, working collaboratively to address this issue, and the city of Destin is right there at that table that can report back on a regular basis as to what's happening.
Any further questions?
Thank you for all your hard work. I do appreciate it. I brought this up probably 2 months ago, and I took a little bit of beating about it, but I wasn't trying to harm anybody. I was just trying to see if we could help people, and that's what you're doing. Thank you for everything. How many people will the facility that's there now, how many people will it house?
The initial phase, Tuffy, would be 10 people in the first building that I mentioned. The second building, when completed, will sleep 40. There's some portables there. So I was just mentioning to Carrie, as a matter of fact, from the Daily News, that I think within 2 years or so, this capacity, this community, could hold 100 or more people.
Good.
And it's important to realize, folks, that these are people who want to change their lives. These are people who are down on their luck, that may be sleeping in Walmart or other places such as that truly need just a little help to turn around. And our slogan is, give a hand up, not a handout, certainly.
Thank you.
And we're very encouraged by this.
Thank you for everything you're doing. It's a great job.
I just want to mention too that, part of the continuum of care is to create a systemic response to homelessness that works for all of Okaloosa and Walton County. We're not the only city or county in the country that's working with this problem right now. And for the first time ever in our United States history, we actually have some evidence-based best practices that we're using. We're gotten a better referral system to make sure that when we find someone who's unsheltered, they're referred to the appropriate housing for them. That's reduced recidivism rates, and at the end of the day, everyone's goal is to get the unsheltered homeless off the street and into an appropriate program. We know it's very costly to every city, to every county, the way that it's been handled in the past, and you're not alone in feeling the burden of those costs and of trying to come up with a solution. So that's what we're here to do. My agency and my group, that's our main focus. We gather data, we use that data to decide what our community needs, where we have gaps in services, and then we invest in long-term solutions, basically, is what we're trying to do. We don't want to just manage homelessness anymore and give a meal and a sleeping bag and problem solved. We want to move them into some type of stable housing or facility-based care.
Do you have a logistic way of getting the ones from here over to Fort Walton? I mean, is there going to be a transportation
Transportation is
issue?
an issue, Kyron, that we are working on. We're working with some of the churches. The Okaloosa County Transit System will have a bus stop at this facility at some point in time, not on August 11th, but in the next couple of months, it is in the process of being established as part of the route. So you have churches, you'll have taxis, you'll have the transit. So the number one question, and probably one of the easiest ones to resolve because of those options.
Mr. Foreman?
Yeah, I'm particularly happy with the veterans part of it. What was the secret to that? I mean, did the veterans organizations around town assist you in some fashion?
We created the IVAL Task Force, which is an initiative for veterans of Okaloosa and Walton. We did do a mayor, and we had the VA, we had the housing authorities who have a piece of the veterans housing, and we had an organization called 90 Works who provides housing to veterans as well. We met every 2 weeks for months, and we did a mayor's challenge. Ted helped us coordinate that, and Mel Ponder was a part of that. He was one of 8 mayors and a county commissioner that signed on for that. We basically focused all of our resources on that one population for a year. So veterans took priority over non-veterans and housing programs that were for veterans and programs that were not for veterans. And then we made a by name list, one single waiting list. Every homeless veteran we came across, we put on this list, and then we would meet every 2 weeks and figure out how we were going to get that person into the housing program that was right for them. Because all programs have different eligibility. Some are for more intensive, some are short-term assistance, and that's how we did it.
Just one follow-up on it. A few years ago, Judge Maney used to hold a stand-down, and
Still do
which
it.
participated in. As part of that, he would hold court in one of the rooms there, and he would review the records of the veterans there to see if there was something that they had done in order, a minor offense or something like that that was holding them back on maybe getting work or that sort of thing. And I thought that was an awfully effective way of doing that.
And we still do have vet court. It's at the stand down every year, but then also he does that outside of the annual stand down. So it's not just one day a year, and misdemeanors and things that are preventing them from moving forward with their life, he helps them out with that. We still have an annual stand down. It's not just for veterans here in our community. So we still do put that on every year. It's going to be in November this year. And unfortunately, what we found last year was a lot of the people that attended were not only not veterans, but they were not homeless. They were extremely low income. And we did a lot of assessments and a lot of trying to find the homeless veterans. And we did last year find them to add to our list, and we did house the ones that we were able to house. So when we claim functional zero for our community, that doesn't mean that we've housed every homeless person on the street. It just means we've housed all of the ones that want to be housed, and we have enough resources available and open. So if someone becomes homeless or decides they want to be housed, they will come into that program, and we'll have enough resources to do it.
I know Councilmember Dixon, since I've been on the council, kind of started the ball rolling. I know many of you have probably mentioned this to Carice, but I'd just like to give her a little compliment that she's jumped right on this. Instead of making it a Destin problem, she's jumped in so we can call it a county problem, because we know you all have been dealing with it a long time, and we appreciate your help and look forward to working with you any way we can.
We'll be around to work with for sure.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 16th? Are any corrections?
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor? Unanimous yes vote. Under public hearings, we have two ordinances. The first, 1616CN, which is a waste management franchise extension. Is there any public comment on this item? Council members, comment?
Want to have me read? for the
No, I'm
record?
sorry. Would you please read by title?
Ordinance number 16-16 CN by title is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to the collection and disposal of trash, garbage, and other refuse. Amending ordinance 11-04-CN, the exclusive franchise to Waste Management, Inc. of Florida, a private corporation for the collection and disposal of all residential and commercial trash, garbage, and other refuse within the city limits, as such has been previously amended by ordinance 11-24-CN, providing findings, amending section 4, term to extend same by 12 months, amending section 19, recycling program, to provide for certain reporting, amending section 29, rates and charges, to provide that grantee is responsible for billing and collections, amending section 31, delinquent accounts, to provide new procedures for handling of delinquent residential accounts, providing for modification of contract, providing for entirety, providing for a savings clause, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on second reading.
Ms. Lejeune, further comment?
The Waste Management franchise extension is for a one-year term, and there's been no changes to the ordinance since the first reading.
Council members, motion or comments?
I'll make the recommended motion, Mayor. I move that ordinance number 16-16-CN be approved on second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Discussion? I see no discussion. Call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. The second ordinance is 1617CN, Gulf Power Franchise Extension. Mr. Miller, would you read by title?
Ordinance 16-17-CN by title is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, relating to electric utility franchise, amending ordinance number 048, the franchise to Gulf Power Company, a private corporation for the provision of electric utility services within the city limits, as such has been previously amended by ordinances 048.1 and 02-01-CN, providing findings, providing for amending section 5, term of franchise, right to refuse to extend the time by 2 years, providing for modification of contract, providing for entirety, providing a savings clause, and providing for an effective date. The ordinance is before you for consideration on second reading.
Ms. Lejeune, explanation?
As the city attorney mentioned, sir, this franchise extension is for a 2-year period, and there have been no changes to the ordinance since the first reading.
I'll open the second reading of this ordinance for public discussion. Any public comment? No public comment. Council members?
I'll make the recommended motion. I move that ordinance number 16-17-CN be approved on second reading.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Foreman?
Yes. 30 years passed rather quickly. Now we've got 2 years, and I think it would be prudent to come up with a plan as to how we're going to arrive at that point in time in 2 years with the negotiations that we've discussed most recently. And I would like to have the city manager take a look at it and come back with some sort of a recommendation as to how we approach that.
Yes, sir. I would also like to individually meet with each one of the council members. We can do that during our normal scheduled meetings, and get an understanding of some of the items that the council members would like to see in the new agreement going forward.
Excellent. Further discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. This is the opportunity for the public to speak on the council propositions. This is item 6, 7A, 17, 18, 19, and 20. I have one card. Mr. Claude Perry would like to speak on 20A. Mr. Perry?
I think this is not on the, can I wait and do that at the time of the discussion?
No, we'd like to keep it on order unless one of the council members wants to set aside the normal.
20 is not on the public opportunity.
Yes, I'm sorry, it was added late, and that was a mistake.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank the council.
Give us your name again.
Claude Perry, 732 Harbor Boulevard in Destin. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. This item, 20A, is long and short-term infrastructure cost. And I just wanted to comment that, once again, I do not see any effort or activity here that indicates that the city is making plans and preparations for parking garages. And I would urge you to consider putting some item in here for at least designing or planning for parking garages that I consider, and I think most of the property owners consider, that the city has a obligation to, made an obligation, and hopefully will live up to that obligation, because we do have a serious issue with parking on the harbor. We anticipated this problem, as I've spoken to you many times before. This is not anything that's shocking. If the boardwalk was successful, it was certainly to come. A parking problem would certainly follow. And many of us property owners urged that the parking garages be built before the boardwalk was built. But council elected to build the boardwalk first and to see if it would be successful. And I think it has been successful. I think there are more people on the harbor. There's more people walking and more bicycles on the. So I think it has been a huge success and one that the council should be complimented on. Okay, and it always comes back to the money. How do we fund these parking garages? And I understand that. Trust me, I've been short of money my whole life, and I'm still short, and I'm fixing to be 80 years old. So I understand the money issue. But I do feel, and I have felt this for some time, that there was money available in this Triumph Gulf Coast. Now, I know that there are many citizens in our community who feel that money should be spent on economic development and economic development only. I do not feel, I'm not one of those people. I feel that the monies were created by a lawsuit that the state of Florida instituted against BP and collected or won their lawsuit for damages to the state, and the state has allocated that money to, at least that's my understanding, that the state has allocated that money to 8 counties who were impacted by the oil spill. Now, we all know that there was limited oil. We all know that, but the damage that we suffered as a result of the media and the extensive media coverage of caused us to have lots of damage from an economic standpoint. And I'd just like to, this is, let me just read this initial article, and I'd like to see the council pursue at least finding out what the charter of Triumph Gulf Coast says they can do with the money, because initially it said Triumph Gulf Coast is a nonprofit corporation organized to oversee 75% of funds recovered by the Florida Attorney General for economic damages to the state that resulted from the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Now, we know that that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 billion that the state recovered. I don't even know how to say $2 billion. I mean, much less how much money that really is. That 75% is $1.5 billion for 8 counties. This article goes on to say, Triumph Gulf Coast must establish, hold, invest, and administer a trust account at a federally insured institution for the economic recovery, diversification, and enhancement of the 8 Northwest County, Florida counties disproportionately affected by the spill. Those in counties include Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, Walton, Bay, Gulf, Franklin, and Wakulla. Now, to me, economic recovery, we are in a economic recovery from the oil spill. Yes, you can argue that some of this is the recession, but you can also argue that our demographics has collapsed, and in my opinion, it was due to the BP oil spill and the BP spending millions and millions of dollars advertising across the board throughout the United States, I suppose, to try to get people to come when they realized that we suffered in Florida, not Alabama, not Louisiana, not Mississippi, but Florida did not suffer any direct results of oil spill, but we suffered economic loss. And this money is for economic recovery. So I know there are individuals in the council, in the county who say this money is for economic diversification. But I think just recently the Mid-Bay Bridge, it came up before the Mid-Bay Bridge Authority that some of this money could be used to pay off the Mid-Bay Bridge debt. And as I understand it, Senator Gates has said that is a possibility, that could be done, that should be looked at. So I urge you as a council to take whatever steps you need to. If you don't buy a ticket to the lotto, you're not going to get you're certainly not going to win it. So I think we need to pursue this pot of money that's for helping us recover from our economic.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Leah Moore, 7A.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Lee Moore, representing Howard Group. I am speaking about item 7A regarding the tree ordinance, and just wanted to restate what we stated in an earlier meeting. It appears that a different direction is being considered tonight for pursuit of writing the ordinance. We continue to recommend the hiring of a professional, independent expert to assist the city with writing the ordinance, who has no involvement in or financial interest in any way in the city of Destin. Nothing accusatory of anyone here. It's just that we have some thoughts about it as far as believing that it would be great to have someone who has some experience with dealing with utilities as it pertains to the trimming and removal of trees, utility companies. We understand that a professional or some professionals have offered input, and we encourage input from a variety of people in anything that the city does. Actually, we think that's great, but our concern is more based around who would actually write the ordinance. We feel it must be clear and concise with no loopholes. It can't be just another ordinance. The trees are so critically important. It has to be something meaningful that is very helpful with meticulous detail as far as what it says and how it's implemented and clarity. But really, quite honestly, the portions of the Land Development Code that address landscaping issues right now are very difficult to understand in the current Land Development Code. And also, as I said before, we believe it should have severe enough penalties that it actually deters people from cutting down trees. $75, $250, $1,000 a tree won't do it. That's our strong opinion. It should be thousands of dollars in penalty per tree if someone illegally removes one. And so you've got to be able to have the will to put the teeth in it. And it must be done quickly. We wonder how long it might take now that you're considering a different approach with this new process. And also, our understanding is there was some concern about it not being budgeted for this year, but we're sitting at August 1st. It seems that the time it would take to get a professional consultant on board and then actually produce work product and invoice the city and then pay that invoice, you'd probably be into the next fiscal year, and you could set it up that way actually intentionally, and that could be budgeted for during this budget process. I don't anticipate that it would be a large amount of money just to assist with the writing of one ordinance. So those are our thoughts about that, and we also understand there was a temporary moratorium on removing trees discussed at the tree committee meeting, and we do support that in order to stop the bleeding. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Green, agenda item 18.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. Captain Jim Green, 824 North Lakeside Drive. I'm also the Vice Chair of the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee. These are my opinions, not theirs. First thing is the speed limit dropping down. That's very important. At the CRA board member meeting, we had some discussion on it, and right now at 35, people are doing 45 and 50, and if we can get it dropped down and that 25 and make it 35 where we're supposed to be at now, that would be very helpful. Y'all have a pretty tough task ahead of you with some of our recommendations. Our last meeting was fairly aggressive, especially when it comes to the medallion and the cost of that medallion, which that's going to be your toughest thing, is figuring out that. And we made a pretty aggressive recommendation, but I urge you to listen to the industry and try and work with them, because we're not trying to stop commerce. We're just trying to rein it in to where it's supposed to be. I urge all of you to push forward, whether it's with the medallion or it's just working it into the budget with the harbor master. It's not just pontoon boats and jet skis down there. It's kiosks and it ranges. The parking problem is a plethora of issues. The rental boat industry seems to be part of it. That's where we hear the most complaints about in private and in meetings at times. But we just urge you to push forward with that. Enforcement is a huge thing, and with that, there's not a whole lot of reason to make a whole lot of new ordinances if we enforce what's on the books. So, thank you for listening to our recommendations tonight, and I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
On the consent agenda, we have one resolution, 1612. Would you read by title, Mr. Miller?
Resolution 16-12 by title is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Destin providing authority for the city manager to enter into a LAP agreement with FDOT for design funding on the Calhoun Avenue and Zerby Street pedestrian improvements project with Transportation Alternative Program funding and providing for an effective date.
Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir. I would like to have Mr. David Campbell, the Director of Public Services, to give his report on this particular item.
Mr. Campbell?
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this year, staff submitted application for the Transportation Alternative Program at FDOT to acquire funding for the design of a 10-foot pedestrian pathway essentially from Clement Taylor Park to our heading south down Zerby to our parking lot. With the object was to connect the sidewalk from our facilities, our two new parks and our parking lot, to eventually connect to a pathway that goes under the Marler Bridge. Currently, we do not have an easement to cross property to make that connection, but I believe staff is continuing to work towards that goal. What this does, this funding for design will allow us, once we design, to make application for the construction, which would be likely if we get this design completed. And I'd certainly like to answer any questions you may have regarding this.
Further comment? Motion? Mr. Dixon?
It is hereby moved.
One sec. I'm sorry. We got a comment.
Go ahead. I probably need to save my comments till I get a second on it.
Okay, go do the motion.
It's hereby moved that the City Council approve Resolution 1612, providing authority for the city manager to enter into a LAP agreement with FDOT for design funding on the Calhoun Avenue and Zerby Street pedestrian improvement project, and further authorize the mayor to sign Resolution 16-12 on behalf of the council.
Second? Second. Have a motion, have a second. Discussion? Mr. Dixon first.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. 2 years ago, we had put in our budget $300,000, which I thought was a very large sum of money, to put a sidewalk in from, I guess it would be Highway 98 or somewhere near there, down to Clement Taylor Park. And I don't know, I did talk with the city manager last week, and we had to actually find it. That I thought it was in the budget we're in now, but it was the previous budget that we actually allocated that money to put that in. After I've looked at this thing, I don't know if we're maybe should be looking, and I'm just throwing this out there for discussion, on the south side of Calhoun Avenue versus going on the north side of it, with maybe crosswalks or something going to the park. we've already got sidewalks that are there. And, I hate to see us, I think those sidewalks need to be enhanced some way. They're 3, maybe 4 foot wide, and I think that we've already got the foundation laid with the sidewalks being there, and I think it might be better to try to connect it from where we already have sidewalks. So has that been looked at or thought about or anything like that? And another thing too is I know our budget's coming up, and I was going to discuss this when we get into budget discussions, but the road, Calhoun Avenue, is one of our most historic roads in Destin, and it's one of the worst looking roads in Destin. And I think by maybe moving the sidewalk, putting the sidewalk, building it bigger than what it is now at present, would help accomplish some of that by doing that. So anyway, I'd like to see us utilize, if it's legal to do, that $300,000 where we allocated that 2 years ago, and then what I understood, it's still out there, that we utilize that money to go forward with this project. So just any questions there, comments, whatever.
The Councilmember Braden? Oh, I'm sorry. Question?
Would you like me to respond to that, Councilman Dixon? Go ahead. The $300,000, initially when we put this, proposed this project to the FDOT, the $300,000 was a match, and it'll continue to be a match on this particular project. We have, the ultimate goal, and you're exactly right, is to connect the new sidewalk on Kelly Street that comes, to Calhoun, to connect from Kelly Street up to Clement Taylor Park, so we have that entire system for the pedestrians and the bicyclists, the multimodal. Right now, when we presented our case to FDOT, we had to demonstrate that we had pedestrian safety along US 98 in mind, hence the connection to the boardwalk underneath the bridge. It would give another opportunity for pedestrians to safely cross US 98. But we do have that ultimate connection. We're working on that from Kelly Street.
Okay, the $300,000, from my understanding, was not to put anything under the bridge. It was from 98 to Clement Taylor Park.
That's exactly right. With the ultimate plan being the connection to US 98, this being the first step towards accomplishing that.
Okay, all I'm saying is basically there's $300,000 that are there that we did not spend. And
that's right.
And so why couldn't we use that for this and start it with this?
We intend to use the $300,000 as a matching, the grant that we anticipate receiving from DOT for construction.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Braden?
Thank you. Was this always a 300,000? Was that always a match?
That was always a match.
So that was from day one. That was a match.
That was as far as I know, our application to FDOT to get construction dollars, we use that as a match.
Isn't there's one piece. Isn't the Bay House already? They've already built a sidewalk. Is that correct?
There's some sidewalk already there.
And Wayne Lung has built a pretty good chunk. And isn't Leonard Destin? Isn't that sidewalk going to be built when that park is built?
It's my understanding that all the construction on that property by the state will be on the property, nothing in the right-of-way. So we would have to construct that sidewalk. Now, keep in mind, this sidewalk is in accordance with our multimodal requirements, which means that we would have not just a concrete sidewalk, there would be landscaping, there would be street pedestrian lighting. Approximately every 80 feet, there'd be a pedestrian light. There would be street furniture,
Please no.
as in garbage cans.
In the thought process on doing it on the south side, I know that someone, I'm not sure who that was, said they didn't want to add to a 4-foot sidewalk. They wanted to tear that sidewalk up, and it just seems like a lot of money to rip all that out and then put the wider sidewalk in there. So I don't know how much cost effective that would be. So we're gonna put benches over there too?
No.
That's all I have, Mayor, thanks.
Councilmember Marlar.
Thank you. David, about the Leonard Destin Park, so there's no adjoining sidewalk on either side of that property? Because I think, isn't that the way our ordinance works? If there's adjoining sidewalk, then regardless of who builds it, you're supposed to build a sidewalk. That's why I'm curious why the state's not going to do anything there.
Well, I haven't had communications with the state on this. It was my understanding that they were going to purchase the property, build a park, give it to the city of Destin, and give us 10 years of maintenance for that. I don't believe that anyone's asked them about a sidewalk.
Okay, because I thought our ordinance on that was that if there is adjoining sidewalks on either side of a developed property, they are required to do it regardless of who it would be, state or a resident or whatever.
I can look into that for you, Councilman Marlar.
Okay.
Councilmember Foreman?
Yeah. Okay. The motion here is to enter into an agreement with FDOT for design funding.
Correct.
Specifically, so out of all of this will come a design which we will have some opportunity to look at and to be able to negotiate or discuss. And so until we have a piece of paper that shows what we're asking for here, I think it's a good idea to go ahead and request the funding and at least let somebody else pay for the design.
Councilmember Dixon?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the design. What I was speaking of is that, in my opinion, I have said in the past that putting sidewalks side by side, old part, new part, looks bad. I was talking about a total revamp of this street. So, but whatever side you're talking about putting the sidewalk on, I don't really care. What I worry about more than anything is that who is going to do the design work for this? Is a continuous service contractor or what?
We had anticipated the continuing service provider designing this. We have to verify with the FDOT. It may be because these are federal funds that we're going to have to go out for a competitive. We had to on Hutchinson Street because that was a federally funded project. So I anticipate the same here.
Okay, I'm just going ahead and state my opinion about this. Sometimes when we get design teams in, they work off of how much, they get paid on how much a project actually costs. And, you know, what I've seen in the past with different things, in fact, the Heritage Park was at one time going to be $3.5 million. And we said, no, there's no way that we can spend that much money on that particular park. What I worry about is that we're going to create a monster with this, and the fact that we do pay the people to design this on the actual cost of the project. I would much rather get some sort of a flat fee, tell us how much it's going to cost things. So just if you would, please keep that in mind.
Councilmember Braden?
Thank you. On that same note, is that 65,000, is that DOT paying that, or we matching some of that as well?
That's fully funded by FDOT.
So, and it's $65,000, that's to design a sidewalk with some swells, trees, and a couple of garbage cans. Is that what we're talking about?
And also underground electric with lighting.
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
When I say underground electric, I don't mean the, we tried requesting funding to underground the electric along Calhoun, but that's not eligible in these types of grants.
See no further discussion, so we'll call for the vote. Unanimous, yes? Councilmember Morgan, would you like to start us off?
Thank you, Mayor. We had the tree board meeting last week. I know I brought this up on July 5th to send out an RFP for a professional. The city manager requested that I do this. At the tree board meeting, there was an arborist there from Backridge Tree Service in Milton. He was really impressive. He had worked in a lot of cities that had successful tree ordinances, and he had worked in a lot of cities that had very unsuccessful tree ordinances, and he voiced some of his concerns after the tree board meeting to the city manager. And if you want to help me explain a little bit why you asked me to do this.
Yes, sir, certainly. As Councilmember Morgan had stated, this gentleman gave a presentation to the tree board and had described some of the details that the tree board needed to be looking at as they reviewed the best practices that we had provided them. He also recommended that we look at the city of Atlanta, that they also had a very good tree ordinance. He also, at that time, volunteered his services at no cost to the city to work with the tree board as they look through the best practices and the ones that they would like to see adopted by the city of Destin, help them to tweak them, for lack of a better word, so that we know that we have a tree ordinance that not only has teeth, but has a solid permitting process that will accomplish what it is that this council and the tree board were looking for. As Councilman Morgan stated, after the meeting, the Parks and Recreation Director, Lance Johnson, and I spent a good half hour speaking with this gentleman afterwards. I wanted to, number one, make sure that the credentials that he was talking about at the meeting were indeed, that he was what he said that he was. I also checked with a colleague of mine back in Boynton Beach who also knew this person. He has given presentations at conferences for arborists, governmental arborists in the state as well. I wanted to make sure that his commitment was firm, that when he offered to work with the tree board, that he would indeed work through the process to where we could have language that the tree board would be comfortable with, that could be presented to the council, that the council could say, yes, this is the meat of what we want our tree ordinance to look like, at which time we could give it to one of our city attorneys to then write the ordinance using the exact language recommended to the tree board and approved by this council. My main goal here was fiscal responsibility, to not go out and hire a professional that we, A, had come forward and volunteered on their own to work with us, and B, hire an outside lawyer when we have lawyers on staff that are perfectly capable of writing an ordinance as long as the language has been approved by the council and the tree board ahead of time. So that was why I had posed the question to Councilman Morgan and asked if he would be willing to rescind the directive to go out for RFP in the interest of saving not only money for the city, but the time that it would take to go out and hire this professional. I also made Councilman Morgan a promise that if this professional did not live up to the expectations of the tree board, that he could then, through council, direct me to go ahead and do the RFP anyway, which I would be happy to do.
Yep, thank you. And I do think that because the RFP wasn't set to go out until late October, November anyways, I think that this is an opportunity for us to get some, to adopt a few resolutions or just one big resolution for a tree ordinance sooner than October, November is my goal here. So in the sake of everything she just said, I make a motion to rescind the direction of staff to put out an RFP for a professional to help develop a stronger tree ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Discussion, Mr. Braden?
Thank you. That was my understanding as well, that this would go before the tree board, and as long as it was everything we wanted, not just something close or almost, we would go with it. And I was thinking if it was something that would be a savings, to the taxpayers, why not take advantage of it? And after speaking with the city manager on it, it sounds like that's definitely the right way to go. So I'm definitely supporting this. Thank you.
Mr. Marler?
Yeah, in accordance with what Ms. Moore mentioned, now this person now lives in Destin that is volunteered or?
Milton.
In Milton, so, and how much knowledge, as Ms. Moore was saying, we wanted an outside source, how much knowledge does he not have to be unbiased?
He's the most knowledgeable person I've ever spoken with.
What I mean by that is in the Destin situation, as Ms. Moore
I
was saying.
think his company being based out of Milton, they've done a good bit of work here, and I think he's familiar with our lack of a tree ordinance.
Okay, so he could do a non-biased opinion, so that would give us a better.
I want it, he obviously has a financial interest. He cuts down trees for a living, but at the same time, which would be a hesitation to hiring a tree company, an arborist to do this, but he really is what I would consider a tree hugger of sorts. I think he's doing this for the right reasons. He's asking, he feels like he's vested in helping us create a strong tree ordinance.
Okay.
We have a motion, second. I see no further discussion. Call for the vote. Unanimous, yes?
And just a couple more things. Just to reiterate what Mr. Perry said about Triumph Gulf Coast, is anyone on staff, have they made taken any action to secure some of this BP money?
If I'm not mistaken, the BP money is coming from the county, and it is what we are using for the Royal Melvin Heritage Park. There was a meeting on July 28th that our own Lindy, our grant coordinator, had attended, and from what I understand, because this is before I got here, there was the ORAC committee that when the BP money we knew it was going to be made available to the county, they came together and they created certain criteria for this, and you have to meet the criteria in order to apply for the money.
I believe these are two different pots of money. One's for the Parks Restore Act, and then what I'm speaking of is the one regarding economic development. And I know it was on Greg's radar before he left. I don't know if any staff member.
Mr. Schmidt, do you?
Private committee.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Schmidt, would you be able to shed some light on this?
Yes, the Restore Act and the Triumph are two different pots, and the Triumph funds is a much larger pot, but it's split across a little broader area, and it is, as you mentioned, geared mostly towards economic development. There's an independent Triumph committee, basically, that's helping to establish what the goals for that money is, and typically I think they're looking for much farther reaching projects in terms of economic development. So it's not it's not going to be something that we could probably use for for smaller projects within the city unless they just finally get down to having difficulty spending the money. But we're certainly going to keep our finger on the pulse as that develops.
Is this, does the city have a wish? I mean, do you see any applications of that money for the city? And let's say, and Greg, before he left, he had mentioned that there may have been some exceptions for infrastructure. I just don't know. It's so much money, I'd hate to drop the ball on it.
Well, I think we'd probably like to see a bypass around the city of US 98, but that's, I mean, and I'm saying that in jest, but quite honestly, there are, as I understand it, they're looking for some very large, game-changing sort of places to put substantial portions of this money and road infrastructure and that sort of thing, but much larger projects are some of the things I think they're looking at. Also, anything that would really have to do with changing the face of economic development for any certain area. So, if we could find some way to boost our economy with, something other than tourism, then that might be something we'd have a chip in the game with.
I'd like to ask the city manager to kind of refresh herself with the Triumph Gulf Coast and that money and just keep an eye on it. And one last thing, there was a article in the Northwest Florida Daily News about the sports complex here, and I'd like to congratulate Lance and his team on another successful summer. I get hundreds of athletes eating with me during the summer, and it's a great program. Y'all do a great job, and thank you very much.
Before I let you off the hook, this recession motion that we voted on will have to be re-voted on at the next council meeting, unless council would like to set aside the rules and vote on it tonight. I need a motion to set aside the rules in a second. We'd vote on that and then go ahead and take care of the item so it does not have to come back up. Council's pleasure.
I'll move to set aside the rules.
Second.
I have a motion, second, to set aside the rules. Any discussion? All those in favor, vote yes. We have a unanimous yes vote. Mr. Miller, how do we form the motion for the second?
Mayor, I ask for the motion to rescind then again, and that will confirm it.
Okay.
I motion to rescind the following motion previously adopted by the City Council on July 5, 2016, to direct city staff to develop and send out a RFP for a professional to help develop a stronger tree ordinance.
We have a motion.
Second.
Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? And I've locked up my machine, so you'll have to raise your hand for discussion. No further discussion. I'll call for the vote. I hit the vote button too quick. Sorry. We have a unanimous yes. So that item is taken care of and will not come back before the council. Councilmember Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have much tonight other than just a general thank you. I know, Ms. Yelverton, you're still here. Mr. Corcoran, I applaud your efforts. These issues that we face and the challenges that we have with addressing the needs of the homeless and all the issues involved are not simple. They're very, very complex, and they require a lot of effort and a lot of different approaches. And so in general, just thank you, and we appreciate your help and ongoing assistance. Other than that, I have nothing further, Mayor.
Councilmember Marlar.
Other than kudos again for Lance and the Recreation Department, I have nothing else.
Councilmember Foreman.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Councilmember Dixon.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a couple things. I actually wanted to follow up. I think we all got the same email about the duck crossing signs, and there was a citizen that was going to volunteer to, it sounded like, out of his own pocket, place those. And then he was very concerned because I think he thought the duck that he called Dewey had been squashed. So I was just checking to see, because I know city manager had looked into the possibility of doing that, and then he kind of wrote back and was all upset about Dewey. And I know this sounds ridiculous, but I agree. I mean, it's important, and everybody loves seeing those little ducks crossing, and sometimes people just don't care. But what was the general outcome of that? Because it seemed like there was some back and forth, and then it just sort of dropped off.
Right. I've spoken with our Director of Public Services, and we have ordered the duck/geese crossing signs, and as soon as we have them, staff will go ahead and put them out at the site on the right-hand lane coming from both sides, right there before the bridge where the little ducks live.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on that because, especially with the elementary school right there, all the kids love to go over there and look at the ducks, and sometimes it's not a pretty sight when someone's rapidly driven through there. I also got an email from someone that wanted me to follow up on something that I brought up last year. I had discussed the emergency preparedness plan and the fact that I wasn't aware if we even had one. And I believe it was the council meeting June 1st of 2015. And at the time, the former city manager had said that he had believed there was an interlocal agreement and that he was going to look into it. And then I believe the report back was that it was being worked on. And obviously, it's summer and we all start thinking about what are we going to do, what plans are set in place. So I just wanted to check and see if you could look into that. Maybe you already know about it and could share details or something. But obviously, anytime we're in a summer or hurricane season, it's a good time to review it and make sure that we do have a plan of action in place, not just for us, but for anybody that might need to evacuate the city. And where do we go? What do we do? I don't see signs around here, but then again, I'm not necessarily looking around for an evacuation route sign either.
We do have a hurricane plan for the city. There's not a lot that the city does in response because we work, that maybe that's the collaborative effort that Mr. Cassell was talking about. We work with the county. I have already attended, along with Mr. Hank Woolard, a web EOC training course at the county for the municipalities. We collaborate directly with the county when there's watches and then going into the warnings. I do understand that one of the key issues is evacuation for the citizens of Destin. If we have a major hurricane coming our way, we try to discourage people sheltering at home. We do ask people to evacuate the areas. I know that once the winds get to 40 miles an hour over the bridges, they close them. So a lot of what we do is notification, and we've started working more diligently with our website. We've started a Twitter site that I've now linked up with FEMA and NOAA, and we will be pushing that information out through Twitter and through our Facebook page and on our website for citizens to use. We encourage the citizens to go to ready.gov, which is just a wealth of information for hurricane preparedness. But I do want to assure you that Mr. Tim Pietenpaul, who is our emergency manager for the city, he is on top of it. He's been working with the hurricane plan, and we are prepared if we should get a hurricane watch or therefore a warning for the city.
Someone had mentioned to me that they thought we used to have sirens that would go off, but no one had heard them in years. Is that just a rumor, or?
I'm looking at staff, and they're shaking their heads, so
I can answer that. Yes. Many years ago, there used to be a giant siren on what is now the sheriff's office. I doubt it works, and even if it did, it's gone. It's gone. Okay, all right. That's the only one we had. And as far as with everything that we have now with TVs and we get everything over our iPhones and stuff, I don't think it's it's a major deal. I think that was more along the lines of a hurricane thing, but originally, a tornado thing. But originally, when that was put in, that was to call the volunteers back to the fire station because there was a fire. So it really was never a severe weather tornado warning thing.
Well, a history lesson for us too. So thank you so much. That's all I have for tonight.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. On that, the sign issue, Mr. Campbell, you got any updates on the North Lake Drive sign we've been talking about?
We contacted Hank Woolard in Community Development. He handles addressing, and he's working on that right now.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, he's on vacation this week, but we should see some progress here pretty soon.
Awesome, thank you so much. And the guardrail that's laying down by Destiny East, behind the guardrail, I guess somebody ran into it and they've replaced it, and there's a pretty good sized chunk wadded up and laying behind the guardrail. Is that the contractors?
That should be the contractor's responsibility. We'll make sure that that's taken care of.
Thank you. They can't even, grass has grown up around it and they can't clean up, so that would be great if we could take care of that. Thank you. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
City Attorney, Mr. Miller.
Henry VIII told each of his 7 wives, "I won't keep you long." And I do have just a couple of comments for you this evening. Thank you. For the first time since 1975, next week I will not be an appointed or elected official of a Florida municipality. As you know, in 1985, I was hired as city attorney for the city of Destin. First, I'd like to say a thank you to my wife, Caroline. We've been married 46 years and still like each other. And also my children, who are now adults, of course, but who lived through this professional life that I have had and continue to have, and the demands and time conditions that are involved in serving local governments. It's been my privilege to serve all 40 city council members of the city of Destin, 9 of the 10 mayors. I did miss one mayor who had a short term during my previous absence from this role. I believe there's been eight city managers and 4 city clerks. And I'd like to thank all of those folks, and especially mayors and council members, because I share with these folks when I do an introduction, and I see Jim, he knows what I'm going to say because he got that sermon, is that it's a whole different game when you come sit down up here behind this table and you have the advantage if you've taken it. And I can say council members and mayors here have been very hardworking and have done that to attempt to assimilate all the information that you're provided when we're dealing with hundreds of pages of materials twice a month at least. And all the time and effort that takes. And it goes very much unheralded by many who don't see that invisible part about what you all do, what the city staff does, what those of us that are appointed to do other functions do, because to most of the public, this 30 minutes or 4 hours of city council meeting is what comes across to them as running the city. And we all know that actually, these policy and legislative sessions are a part of that, but that running the city is a 24-hour-a-day proposition every day. I can tell you I will not miss being on call 24/7, but I wouldn't trade a minute of it for these last several years. The dedication of you all and your predecessors is incredible, and I thank you for that service. I especially want to point out, though, how distinctive it is that the city of Destin has continually had the quality of appointed and employed staff that this city has enjoyed. I have represented 7 Florida municipalities and done some consulting work with other local governments in Florida. And 2 of those municipalities, I've had 2 terms separated by some interruption. I've served as a city council member. I've served on advisory boards for municipalities. Now, that city council term for me was as I was a resident of Fort Walton Beach. When you come to this role, or where you move to this community, or you come to one of these meetings, you don't really have any point of reference about the level of capacity and competence and dedication that a city staff might or might not have, because the only one you've ever seen firsthand is the one you're looking at, wherever it is you're serving. If you'd call it an advantage, I've had the opportunity to see multiples. This staff and the services by the appointed officials you've had is superior beyond your imagination. The quality of the employees of the city of Destin, their dedication to service, the competence that they have brought, the education that they've brought to their roles, and their performance is superlative, and it continues to be. And my greatest pleasure has been this lifetime of association with all of these staff members who to me are my family. And I can't emphasize enough for you how special the city of Destin is because of that proposition. I will miss seeing you all. I'll miss seeing the staff and the public and dealing with the role that we have and the jobs that we're all challenged to accomplish. And look forward to my next engagement somewhere. Thank you all and to your predecessors for this wonderful lifetime of service that I have enjoyed in these different roles in municipalities, because truly we're serving our fellow man, and there is no better work in life. And thank you all. Be careful on encouraging me. I might do the alternative presentation that I had.
Thank you very much for your comments and for your years of service. Any further comments? Then Mr. Sharp, he's not here. Excuse me. Ms. Lejeune?
Yes, sir.
Joe's Bayou?
Yes, sir. The next topic, Joe's Bayou, the regulatory standards for boating restricted areas. This was made based on a request from a member of council. Mr. Steven Schmidt has put together this report for us, so I'm going to turn it over to him.
You've got before you an agenda item that pretty much lays out the current policies and background for creating boating restricted zones, and pretty much the bottom line is that it's limited by Florida statute and by Florida administrative code, and the recommendation is pretty much the most that we could hope to get under current statutes and code, and so we're making the motion that you direct staff to create that boating restricted zone within 500 feet of the Joe's Bayou boat ramp.
Do I have a motion?
I have a motion, Mayor.
Mr. Foreman?
I'll read the recommended motion. I move to direct staff, I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance and an application in an idle speed boating restricted area within 500 feet of the Joe's Bayou boat ramps substantially in accordance with the drawing attached as attachment D and bring it back to the council for approval.
I'll second that.
I have a motion, I have a second, discussion. Councilmember Dixon?
In reading through the material, I saw where we talked about how we're going to distinguish this area, and I saw a pile in there. Is that as if piling, or?
Yes, that's a piling.
I'm a little concerned about that we would put piling in there. I don't know, it may be better to put the floating buoys there for that, or I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just a little bit worried about the pilings that would be going in.
And that's a legitimate concern. We can certainly work through that as we work on the permit application. Obviously, we just want to support there that can support the signage that's required to notify boaters that they need to have no wake.
Okay, and I just didn't know if we were bound by law to do a piling or something like that, but I just wanted to say that there's a lot of people that do night fish, and sticking something like that out there may be a hazard. So if we could just take a look at that, please.
Councilmember Ramsel?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Schmidt, I was going to suggest, I know the county just went through quite a process of finding floating buoys that would work in the pass for the safety corridor. They may be a good resource for something that would work as well here in the bayou.
We'll definitely check with them on that process.
Councilmember Marler?
The two marker pilings, as you get the channel markers, are they controlled by the Coast Guard or county, or who handles that? Maybe we can put some on those too.
The ones in the East Pass Inlet?
The ones coming out of Joe's Bayou, you have the red and green.
Okay, once you leave basically a line from the extension at the tips of Joe's Bayou, you've left city limits, and those are, as I understand, maintained by an Okaloosa County permit.
Okay. Maybe we can work something out with the county to let us put some there too.
Councilmember Dixon?
One more thing. One of the things that, part of the criteria that you could possibly do a no wake through the whole bayou, and I'm not saying that we need to do that right now, but one of the things that I did see in there was vessel traffic and how many boats are actually in there. I think probably what we need to do is have a look at that on some of the busiest times and just see if you may agree that there's a lot of traffic in there. So, that is one of the things that you could utilize maybe to make it a no wake through the whole thing. But let's see how this works, and we may have to do further.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? If not, we'll call for the vote. Unanimous, yes. We have the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee.
Yes, Mayor. At the regular May 11th and July 13th meeting, the Harbor CRA Advisory Committee made several recommendations for consideration by the CRA Board and City Council. Those recommendations were reviewed by the CRA Board at its meeting on July 25th, 2016, and the CRA Board findings and recommendations are summarized below. There are 4 distinct items that would require 4 separate recommended motions. I know that Mr. Steve Schmidt is here to answer any questions that the City Council may have regarding any of those 4 items.
Sorry, I'm catching up here. The discussion, we'll go through items 1 through 4 one at a time. Item number 1, discussion.
Then I would ask Mr. Schmidt to go ahead and do the individual discussion items one by one for the benefit of the council.
Yeah, let's do it as we discussed. We'll do item number one now, and then we'll have a discussion.
Okay, at a Harbor CRA Advisory Committee meeting, it was pointed out that while we have fairly definitive rules for what are described as portable buildings that have wheels and the kiosks in the harbor area, it was recommended that when it was discovered that we don't really have any specific regulation for food trucks, then it was recommended that we create or basically tag on to some of the state requirements for food trucks and make sure that the food trucks in the harbor CRA are operated in accordance with certain standards. Since then, it's occurred to staff that we may want to make this a little bit broader and include requirements for food trucks throughout the city, so that, if there are some other areas of the city that get to be a hotbed for food trucks, that we can regulate them there as well. And there are certain things that food trucks do that are mandated by health codes and that sort of thing. They have to maintain a separate commissary where they can go clean their equipment and that sort of thing, and service the trucks, and have 3-compartment sinks or other cleaning supplies. So they're not basically just cleaning utensils and that sort of thing with a hose at whatever site they're on. And being food trucks and mobile vending, basically they're not supposed to stay in any certain area for too long a time. So we're basically looking to institute a moratorium for the 6 months or so that we think, and it may be less, but we think we need some time to do a little research and determine exactly what we want those regulations to be for the city of Destin, and that was the recommendation that was endorsed by the CRA board.
I noticed in the package we've got a recommended ordinance. Yet at the same time, your recommendation is that we act upon the moratorium. Now, I'm confused. At this point, are we recommending the moratorium so you can work an ordinance?
Yes, the ordinance is actually, the city land use attorney took it on himself once this came before the CRA board, and was determined that it was a unanimous vote that we bring this item to you. He took it on himself to go ahead and craft an ordinance that would accomplish that, and so we included it in this package so that if you chose to approve the ordinance, you could just go ahead and approve the ordinance for the moratorium.
Mayor, may I ask a question of the city attorney? In order to consider an ordinance for approval, sir, does it not need to be noticed first, or am I in error? An ordinance for the city, does it need to be noticed before it can be brought to council to vote upon, or not?
There are some land use regulations that require 2 readings.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, land use regulations uniformly have to go to the LPA.
Would a moratorium need to be noticed?
Yes.
So the council could not vote upon the moratorium ordinance tonight?
No, it is an ordinance. Do we have an ordinance draft?
Yes, sir, we do.
Has it been to the LPA?
No, it hasn't, and actually that would make the recommended motion correct, that we're bringing the attached ordinance back to council for first reading on August 15th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mayor, I did have one item regarding this that I wanted to bring up to council. And of course, it is absolutely at the will of the council, upon further discussion after this agenda item had been put together, the interim community development director and I were wondering if this particular moratorium and further ordinance may not be considered for the entire city rather than just the 8 CRA district. Now, it does say that the moratorium would, special event permits such as the Seafood Festival and the Arts Festival would not be affected by this moratorium, should it be passed by council. But because right now the issue is food trucks in the CRA, Harbor CRA district, we're concerned that food trucks may also become an issue in other parts of the city, infringing upon other businesses or creating traffic issues in other parts of the city. So I was just wondering if the council would like to consider doing a moratorium and then a future ordinance for these type of vending units in just the CRA district or for the entire city. So I just wanted to bring that up to see if the council would like to discuss that.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that's actually a good idea, but to build on that, I had thought that the original intention of the CRA committee or board was that it was to apply to all trailers and kiosks and mobile vendors of that sort, but this seems to specifically state just food vendors. Was it I guess I could ask Mr. Buckingham or Mr. Green, whomever might have the insight on that, what the original intention was.
The original intention was for food trucks because we already had a very streamlined definition of a kiosk or a portable building. When it was brought before the CRA board, I guess a week ago, there was some discussion between the board members about it involving all kiosks, all the entities on the Harbor District.
And what was sort of the feedback on that?
I don't really remember exactly how the vote went down. I don't remember if it was Councilmember Dixon or there was somebody that talked about expanding it, but our objective was the food truck because it was the only thing that was unregulated, and it had been drawn to our attention that there was entities that were operating as a food truck and kind of negating the kiosk standards that that the city had put in place.
Thanks for clarifying that.
I'd like to point out that the attached proposed ordinance is a little bit more all-encompassing, and it basically addresses mobile vendors and describes those as not just food trucks, but also trailers, retail mobile vendors, and other outdoor vendors.
And also to add to that, at the CRA board meeting, the board voted unanimously to expand the moratorium to include portable buildings, retail kiosks, mobile vehicles, and tables set up with items for sale. So that was a unanimous vote by the CRA board to come forward as a recommendation to council.
Cation.
Councilmember Marler.
Okay, you're saying we're going to encompass I'm guessing anything that is human consumption. So, and I go with this because I thought we already had something in place for like the ice cream vending trucks and things that we did that many years ago. And that's going to be in there too. Well, they are actually drive through the CRA too. That's why I'm trying to make sure we don't. Yeah. Well, he's talking about throughout the city, so that's what I'm trying to clarify. We're not just talking the CRA, but you said you want to come back and do it for the entire city.
We've got specific rules for portable buildings that are in the Harbor District and mostly related, and the reason for that is basically related to the FEMA requirements and the fact that the alternative is to either move them up the hill or put them 14 feet in the air. So the only way that we could have portable buildings down there, and the reason they're portable is so that in the event of a hurricane warning, we can get those moved out of the harbor so they don't, become debris that creates even more harm down in that area. We haven't really had any proliferation of portable buildings or kiosks throughout the rest of the city. The harbor district seems to be the locale that attracts most of those. We have felt that with the proliferation of food trucks and their basically their required mobility, that limiting them in the harbor area may just basically create some issues for us in some other areas of the city, and that in this effort that we ought to go ahead and make what other potential changes that would allow us to keep control of some of that while we're pursuing this. And of course, another portion of this that was directed by or recommended by the CRA board was also to take a look at the proliferation of some of the other portable buildings and kiosks and determine whether or not we want to set some limitations in the harbor district for those.
Councilmember Morgan?
I don't, the moratorium's great, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference until we effectively take action on recommended motion number 4, which is to evaluate ways to improve enforcement of BTRs, because, nothing's stopping people from opening up unlicensed down there anyways. I just found another business that was operating without a BTR this morning. He was on the news a few days ago, and they said, "What's a business tax receipt?" And he had no idea what. He said, "I just pay $100 to the landowner every day." So, a moratorium's great, but we don't do anything about the people that are operating down there now unlicensed. So what's to stop them from going down when the moratorium's in effect?
Any further discussion? I dropped somebody off, so I'm pausing for a minute to give you one last shot.
Tuppy, weren't you up?
He had me pull him off.
Oh, okay.
I feel like sometimes we take on a little bit more than we can do, and I think we need to do this just a little bit at a time and concentrate on the CRA, in the Harbor District CRA, and if we have an issue throughout the whole city, to deal with that. But right now, I think the full intent of what we were talking about earlier was the Harbor CRA. And I don't mind looking at everything, but, as I said, we take on a lot sometimes. So my personal feeling is let's just try to deal with the Harbor CRA. And I was glad to hear somebody else bring up the fact that, the T-shirt trailers and, other than like when the rodeo is going on or the seafood festival, but the trailers for T-shirts and the bull rides and things like that will occupy these food places if we don't make sure that we lock down everything that needs to be locked down. So,
Do we have a motion? What type of motion do we need to direct staff to do this? We don't.
You have a recommended motion.
But are we going to separate it and do 4 separate, or are we still going to lump them together as written on here?
I would recommend that you separate them.
The motions are separated in the recommended motion section.
I'll go ahead and make the first recommended motion. Direct staff to advertise appropriately and bring the attached ordinance 16-19-LC back to council for first reading on August the 15th.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Could I have a comment, please?
Yes.
I had not reviewed with Mr. Shirley what procedures he thought were required, and he'd obviously worked this issue. I was confused to think we were dealing with a prior agenda item because I had stepped out and come back in. I do not know that it will be required to go to the LPA. But I'm sure he's already made that determination, just so we clear that in the event it comes back, and I'm not going to be here to tell you that later. But he'll make that determination before bringing it back to you. Thank you.
I believe the LPA meeting is actually August 18th, so if the determination is that it needs to go before the LPA, we will need to bring it back to the next council meeting after the 15th.
Excellent. We have a motion. We have a second vote to approve.
We have a second?
Yeah. Yes.
Second.
Mayor, I need to declare my abstention. I have a food truck in the North Harbor CRA. It's properly licensed, but I do have one, so I can't vote on this one.
Ray, can you help us there? There we go. Thank you. We have one abstention. All others are yes. We'll discuss item number 2. We're going to take a quick break. It's 10 till 8. We'll reform here at 8 o'clock. If you'll return to your seats, we'll get this started.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I didn't mean to get you caught in that.
No, no problem at all.
They just didn't understand.
If we can come back to order, please. Number 2 is direct staff to revise the language regarding the southern line of the description of the South Harbor Festival Marketplace in accordance with the council-approved revised language. It's ordinance 1612 LC. And where are we going with this, Ms. Lejeune?
Go ahead, Steve.
Actually, this has bounced around a little bit, but it was clearly the intent of the the CRA board not to allow open containers on the US 98 sidewalk. The recommendation from the CRA board was to come up with a measurement from the edge of pavement. Upon reflection, it was staff's opinion that since the intent was clearly to not allow open containers on the sidewalk, that it might be a much simpler description to merely use the northerly edge of the sidewalk, basically as the boundary, no matter where that sidewalk was, whether it was in the right-of-way or even contiguous to the right-of-way, in those situations where you might actually get an easement from a property owner and extend the sidewalk onto the private property. Also, there's been some discussion about changing the lanes of 98, skinning the lanes and creating more room to create a wider sidewalk. So if we made that change based on a specific distance, then we might have to come back if that was ever accomplished and change it again. So it was staff is just recommending that the simplest solution to this is to merely describe the northerly boundary of the festive marketplace as the southern edge of the sidewalk, either in or contiguous to the US 98 right-of-way.
It also assists the sheriff's office because when the deputies are enforcing that, they need to be able to, at a glance, eyeball where that restrictive line is. And if we just say that it is the northern boundary of the sidewalk, that makes it very simple for the deputies to be able to enforce.
Do we want to make a motion at this point or continue discussion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Second.
Motion to direct staff to revise the language regarding the southerly line of the description of the South Harbor Festive Marketplace in accordance with the council-approved revised language, and bring ordinance 16-12-LC back for first reading on August the 15th.
Second. If I can make a recommendation first, the in accordance with council-approved revised language was in brackets to leave open to you the possibility of not making it the northern edge of the sidewalk. So I'd ask that you might revise that motion to make it the northerly edge of the sidewalk, and also to, because it appears we may have to take this back to the LPA because of a change, the August 15th date wouldn't work, and we'd have to bring it back to you on September 8th. So with
We do want the southerly edge.
The southerly edge of the sidewalk.
So I think what the wordage is here, the northern boundary, which would be the southern edge of the sidewalk.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll amend my motion as I just said, whatever the proper.
Second.
We have a motion. Second. Discussion. Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, Mayor. I have the same position I did the other night. I'm sure this is in good intent, but I don't see this preventing people from actually following this, nor do I think the open container on the sidewalk poses a safety hazard. I think it's the people drunk. Just because they have a beer in their hand doesn't mean they're more likely to get hit by a car. So I think it's unnecessary, but that's just me.
Mr. Marler?
I lost my train of thought because I kind of agree with Chatham. So the south boundary, as we're talking, but pretty much is basically going to be the property line. Because if you look at the way we have the right-of-way on Highway 98, sidewalk is right up against the curb, the rest of the sidewalk is pretty much against the boundary of the property owners, because apparently that's the way DOT said they have no more right-of-way, and since nobody's going to give it away. So I think that was the intent of the northern part, but then the sidewalk pretty much is under the sheriff's jurisdiction and the state anyway, so I'm okay with the south, but I just wanted to throw that in there.
I knocked someone off. If someone wanted to speak, would you go ahead and add it? We'll go to Councilmember Rams. We'll hold in.
I had pushed my button. I don't know if it's still
I
on
knocked
there.
you off. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I just wanted to say that, we have to have some sort of a defined boundary for law enforcement to be able to, if they need to be able to act. And so, I do understand what Councilmember Morgan is saying, but I do think that we have to define something to where the law enforcement, if they should need to, can enforce the law. So that's just my opinion.
Councilmember Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe when I brought this up I can't even remember how long ago, it's been a year or two, it had been brought to my attention that one of the discussions within the CRA board at that time was the concern of the appearance of people walking up and down 98 with beers in their hand and toting coolers. So it was an aesthetic suggestion as well as a safety suggestion. So I just wanted to add that in, and I'm not sure if y'all covered that at the CRA since I was not here.
Councilmember Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to ask the city manager, did Captain Pecco have any input that council needs to know about?
What we were discussing was that since some of the businesses along 98, their front door actually abuts right up to the sidewalk, that with what you're discussing, it would prohibit patrons from walking out the front door with an open container of liquor, which I understood the intent to be that we did not want visitors and patrons to be walking along 98 on the sidewalk with open containers of liquor. We preferred to have them back behind, so we would need to take it upon ourselves as staff, which we will do, to work with those business owners that abut the sidewalk to help them understand they need to restrict their patrons if they're going to walk out with an open container to go out through the back door rather than the front door, because if they go out through the front door, then they could be detained by a deputy. So that was the discussion that we were having. And I apologize for the sidebar.
Oh, no, I thought he had some comments he wanted to make, so I was going to ask him to come up, but I thought he was giving them to you, so that's great. Thank you so much.
We have a motion, we have a second. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. Mr. Morgan votes no, the rest vote yes. Authorize the mayor, this is item number 3, authorize the mayor to write a letter to FDOT seeking reduction of the Harbor District speed limit to 25 miles per hour. As I'll be writing the letter, I would like to make a couple of comments. I'm not on the CRA, and I know you all voted unanimously for this, but just want to be sure we were considering that we've just put in the crosswalks, and traffic seems to be changing somewhat downtown. The state's got a lot of measuring equipment on the roads. I'm wondering if we really want to do this immediately, or if we could postpone this for a while just to see how things go. I put that out just for your consideration. I've received I've received a number of concerned citizens. One, why do we have residential roads at 35 and we're going to take our main highway and make it 25? But I won't debate that. I think I had an anesthesiologist that lives in my neighborhood concerned because he's afraid he can no longer make it to the hospital in the time frame that the Fort Walton Beach Hospital requires, and he's going to have to move and leave Destin. I'm not too sure that's a legitimate argument, but it is definitely a concern. My wife, who's an anesthetist as well, when she heads to the hospital at 5 a.m. in the morning, they generally start about 5:30, and the roads are empty. They're very concerned about driving 25 miles an hour to work. So I've received some heavy lobbying at home concerning this issue, and I throw it out for your consideration.
Mayor, I have a motion.
Mr. Foreman, make your motion.
Okay. I move that we table this item for a period of 90 days in order to do the due diligence to find out whether or not the signals are operating as they're supposed to, and to determine at that point in time whether or not we still want to move forward with 25 miles an hour.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Mr. Miller, can you table one for 90 days? Is that proper?
Could I suggest to you that you use the term continue instead of table? They have totally different
I will
effects.
modify my motion to use the term continue.
Second.
Mr. Dixon.
I've got mixed emotions on this. I too have had people express concern about this, and just looking at it and driving through there is so many traffic lights now that you really got to be paying attention, and you have to drive slow through there to make sure that. And the reason that we got 35-mile-an-hour speed limits on our back roads is because we don't have the pedestrian traffic that we have on Highway 98, or Harbor Boulevard. So, I'll support the motion that's on the floor, but I will say that, that the reason that we are looking at this is because of so much pedestrian traffic through there. And, I think that you really need to be traveling pretty slow to be able to make sure that you're seeing all the lights that are through there. So it looks like we basically tripled our traffic lights, and so anyway, I'm certainly willing to take a look at it for a little while and see if it's absolutely needed. Also, there is the option of doing 30, so instead of 25.
Councilmember Braden.
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Councilmember Marler.
I have a little apprehension too. I don't know if 90 days is too long, because we're going to be coming up on our biggest one-day event to come the first weekend in October, and that's going to be the very taxing, if not now, the very taxing day for at least 2 to 3 of those lights, just for the Seafood Festival alone. So I'm like Tuffy. I don't know what to do here, because 90 days is going to put us way into the wintertime anyway, where we won't have anything to worry about. I'd like to find out maybe if we could just table it for 30 days, Mr. Foreman, if you'd modify that, and then have the city manager see if they've got monitoring equipment out there, see what it's showing.
Well, you understand that we're just writing a letter to DOT to see if they'll entertain this.
Well, a couple of years ago, I know we tried, and DOT said no, and then I was told
Yes.
later on that they said yes, and so that's where I'm going from.
One other item I did not point out, I believe this is against staff's recommendation as well. Mr. Morgan.
Yeah, I think it's imperative that we get the speed limit down to 25 miles an hour as soon as possible. So I believe we would write the letter and that would trigger the study? Is that how it worked in 2014?
The study, I believe, is taking place now. They've got the measuring equipment on the roads. It's already in progress.
The study to bring it down the speed limit to 20?
No, just
Is that the
monitoring
multimodal?
traffic flow.
Traffic flow and what we got now.
In 2014, when we sent the letter, did they respond to our letter with a study to
Let me ask.
provide the recommendation not to lower it?
Let me ask staff if they might answer those two questions, if they know.
We actually made the request to the DOT near the end of 2013. They did the study in 2014 and looked at US Highway 98 from the Marlar Bridge to Beach Drive. Their recommendation was to retain the posted speed limit of 35, but to work to implement the extensive recommendations outlined in the finalized safety assessment report that was completed in 2013. Some of those safety recommendations included the pedestrian activated signals, and 3 of those have recently been constructed in the Harbor District. I think we're just starting to get them aligned to where they work as they're supposed to. And apparently there's a little smoke and mirrors to work in the electronic timing devices and stuff and getting everything synchronized, and they haven't been operating perfectly. So it's staff's opinion that it's quite likely that the DOT would want to assess the impact of those pedestrian safety signals before making a fairly dramatic change from 35 to 25 in the Harbor District. But that's just our opinion.
And will they start that study at their own leisure, or is it at the request of the city?
I'm not sure of that, actually. I'm not sure whether they would undertake another study in 2016 just because we asked them to, or if they would basically hold us off at arm's length and wait to have a study after they had maybe done a little more assessment of the pedestrian signals.
And I'm not a civil engineer, but the fact that we have more traffic lights in the Harbor District now, I think necessitates the need for a lower speed limit. And I know everybody's catching a lot of grief about them. I know there's a lot of people who aren't happy about the pedestrian walkways. But, there's no reason for, cars to go 35 miles an hour or 40 or speed at 50 miles an hour to go, half a mile only to stop again. So bringing it down as soon as possible is what I would like to see.
Councilmember Ramsell.
Thank you, Mayor. One of my concerns is, in the past, there's been a whole lot of kicking the can down the road, and that's not what I'm saying with 30 or 60 or 90 days, but with a process that would involve writing FDOT or whomever the proper agency is, it's going to take them a while to get back to us and make their decisions. I mean, as we all know, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to probably happen within 2 weeks or 30 days. So I would suggest go ahead and writing the letter, just saying this is something that we're contemplating. What are their thoughts on this? That way, at least we have begun the process. Whether we decide to go forth with it or not, they'll be able to weigh in based on our query. My other thought is, so how is waiting 30, 60, or 90 days going to change or determine our path? If traffic is still slow, are we then not going to bring it down? Or is it if suddenly people are zipping between the lights, we do need to bring it down? I guess I just would kind of like y'all's thoughts on how we proceed. I mean, obviously, the goal here is to keep traffic moving smoothly, but at what point, what is that, balance, or what is that teetering point where we say, 35 is fine, or oops, we need 25?
Councilmember Foreman.
Yeah, I think after having gone through this process once and having it turned down, I think we need support for any letter. We need to show specific, detailed reasons why we want them to do that, and otherwise they're not going to act on it. And I think if you don't take some time, if we start documenting the reasons for 25, which I support, then you have a better chance of getting it through the state. And that's my reasoning. So if we're just going to say, well, we think it ought to be 25 because we say so, that'll never go.
Councilmember Marler?
Well, I'm with Mr. Morgan on one thing. If these crosswalks and dropping the speed limit saves one lives, we've done the right thing. If we save one life or many lives, I still see, even with the lights, from being on a business, working in a business on the harbor, we still have some jaywalkers that still don't get the idea. It's just a few more feet down the road. But having watched some of the traffic back up on the bridge, it actually does work, because I still have the same problem when I come off the island. It's like, they don't follow those signs either, because it goes from 55, 45 to 35 when you hit the bridge, and I guarantee you they still pass me and give me a hand gesture. So well, the way it's been going right now, I really don't think I can support the motion.
Councilmember Dixon?
I think I read in some of the material that we discussed in the past that, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like I read where we had 120-something car versus pedestrian incidents. I know all these people weren't severely injured, but am I correct in that? Did anybody else see that documentation?
Because of the speed limit?
Well, it helps, I would imagine. Yeah. I mean, if they're going a little slower, they make it stop,
Well,
so-
zero is better.
Well, yeah, if they stop, it's all good, but what we're trying to do is keep people from getting killed. Yeah, and I've changed my mind. I am not going to support this.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote.
Can you repeat the motion?
we're
Because the
voting
motion was for the delay, correct?
Delay 90 days, the sending of the letter,
And do some homework.
and do some homework. We have 3 yes, 4 no's. It does not pass. Do we have a substitute?
Yes. You ready? Authorize the mayor to write a letter to FDOT seeking reduction of the Harbor District speed limit to 25 miles an hour.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have further discussion? No. Mr. Braden?
When can we do 25 miles an hour down 98?
Between stoplights.
But I'd love to do, I'd love to do 35, much less 25, or 25, much less 35 down through there. I mean,
I understand you can do it at about 5 a.m. in the morning.
That's about it. According to all the experts we have in town, these crosswalks, we're just gonna bring traffic to a dead stop, so,
You can do 25 crossing the highway.
yeah. That's my thoughts, thanks.
Councilmember Marler?
Back up on a little bit about the crosswalks and stuff where they're getting glitches out. Did you take into account, one of our public safety members, Mr. Mitchell, had sent a email out about some of the problems? Had y'all taken into account any of those, or does Mr. Mitchell need to get with y'all?
We sent those questions to FDOT, and they're going to address every one of the issues that Mr. Mitchell had.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that, since we have that safety, him there on that board, that, we should use some of what his suggestions were. Thank you.
We have a motion. We did get a second, didn't we? Yep, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote. One no, 6 yes. Excuse me. Item number 4, direct staff to evaluate the administrative feasibility and legality of proposed actions regarding the additional regulation of rental vessels to evaluate ways to improve enforcement of business tax receipts and parking regulations and report back to City Council. Again, this is to evaluate. Mr. Braden?
Thank you, Mayor. Why did we take the whole medallion thing out of that? I know they're going to evaluate it away. Do they? And I read the report that staff said that we've tried the medallion in the past and that didn't work, and we didn't have the have enough employees to monitor that. Well, that's one thing we're trying to do is adjust the budget so we can hire some more people. And I thought we was talking about maybe the medallions would help fund a harbor master of some sort. So I was just wondering why that was taken out.
They hadn't been taken out. It was the additional regulation of rental vessels was basically intended to be a medallion system of some sort that you could basically identify specific rentals.
And when do you anticipate that coming back to council?
Well, we probably within a couple meetings, the next couple meetings, possibly by September 8th. We'd want time to evaluate the prospective fees and determine what possible income from the fees would be, and obviously as the staff report indicates, it'd be very difficult at our current code enforcement levels to be able to add this level of control. You almost have to have somebody down there on the harbor full time because so many of those personal watercraft get taken in and out of service and changed that maintaining control over a medallion system in that very tenuous situation would be quite time consuming. So ideally we could craft a fee schedule that would allow us to hire another code enforcement person to help control that. And that's probably going to be something that would be discussed at the budget meeting next week as well.
Yeah, that was my next question. So that's never going to make the budgeting, this year's budget or next year's budget. We'll have to find funds without relying on any type of funds from medallions or anything.
Probably for, excuse me, for the first year, definitely we would need to fund an additional code enforcement person for the harbor from the general fund. Any fee system that we would establish would not immediately generate what we would need to offset that additional person. Also, there was some concern by, if you recall, some of the responsible business owners had asked that whatever we're going to do, if it was something that we would be able to work on after season to put in place for the next season to come, because it would be cost prohibitive for them to try to enter into that type of regulatory fees right now at the end of season. So this is something that we would look at, we would craft and bring back, as Steve had said, maybe over the next few meetings, maybe by November at the latest. I think we would be able to bring something back for council to look at for consideration.
Is that going to give us enough time to get this in place by, say, January 1, so we don't run into the next season and everybody's raising Cain again, that they're not budgeting for it? And I just don't want it. We're still in this season. We need to get, I want it done before the next season, not get into the next season and still talking about it.
Steve, would we be able to implement that by January 1st?
If we bring it back by a November meeting at the latest, and we'd certainly, and we got a definitive direction at that point and approval of a fee structure, then it would be just a matter of getting the medallions created and setting up the system, and I think we could get that done over the winter.
Thank you.
Mr. Marver.
Thank you, Mayor. If it pleases the council, there were some businesses in the harbor who either didn't understand our public opportunity to speak or that come in late, and they wanted to speak on this item, so I'd like the council's indulgence, if it's okay, if we set aside the agenda and allow them to speak if they want to. Some of their questions, I think, might have gotten answered just a few minutes ago, but if it pleases the council.
We have a point of order to set aside the agenda, or the rules to allow us speakers. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those, let's, Mr. Webb, I'm not sure how, I guess I'll lose on the list of, never mind. Okay, call in for the vote. Okay, we've set the rules aside. We'll allow you to ask your question now.
One of the things that I have heard from people that have, the pontoon boat rentals and things like that is are we doing anything for the dolphin spotting boats and the charter boats? And I think that basically the answer is they already are basically have a business tax receipt and they are registered through the city. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
So we won't be adding anything to them. We're only going to, we're looking at just the rental vessels is what we're looking at?
Yes, basically the vessels for hire. And I think the concern in part was that, most of those dolphin cruises and the charter boats, they have professional captains that know how to drive, and the issue with pontoon rentals and personal watercraft is that you're basically handing keys to boats from folks that haven't necessarily been trained to drive the boat. So it's an effort, I think, in part to limit or improve the safety in the harbor, limit the number of rental craft out there, and to get a better handle on how many there are. It's hard to move a dolphin cruise boat up and down the harbor to hide it, but when you're trying to get control of how many personal watercraft are actually being managed from one site, and they get moved around a lot, it's very difficult to kind of keep track of them. So it's an additional effort to basically help keep tabs on exactly how many personal watercraft and pontoon boats we have out there.
Okay, I think we might be getting into a fairness issue here, but that'll be weeded out when we start looking at the legality of this. So I'm done. Thank you, Mayor.
We had two individuals that had asked to speak on this topic. Do you still wish to speak?
Why, you stay on the phone all the time?
That's different. Different.
Start with your name and address, please.
Charles Duplantis, 3810 Indian Trail. I've been in Destin for a quarter century, 25 years, been down here in business. And it's been a long, hard road. And now y'all starting to, and we've got every license we ever did. We pay for our licenses at the city. We pay our taxes, we pay our employees, we pay everybody we have to pay. I think it'd be totally unfair to come up and put an amount just on a pontoon boat, on a jet ski, and then where it's going to stop. Do you go to a restaurant and say, well, you're supposed to have 30 chairs, now you got 60 because you put a porch out there in the back? And it's free enterprise. So everybody deserves to have a chance in free enterprise. And I don't want to get off the subject, but when you go out and borrow $2 million for a piece of property, have to buy all the equipment, and if anybody been in the water sports business before, they'll know you might have 50, 60 jet skis to keep 20 of them running on a daily basis. Because through the amount of problems you have with them, and in the fiberglass damage and everything else you're going to have, you might have a jet ski that's out of service for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And we're really talking of a period of about 40 days where we have a chance to make our money. You don't have a lot of problem in the beginning of the season, and you don't have a lot of problem at the end of the season, it's just that 40 days. And something else you got to think about. We close 6 months out the year, totally 100% closed. That we pay in property tax, we pay in that $2 million or $3 million note. So you're making it harder on us in that time. And then how are you going to determine how much you're going to put to hire somebody to come out and and regulate us? Number one, if I really want to get around it, I'm going to get around it, you know? And that's how people are. So you can sneak stuff in left and right. So you're going to be dealing with somebody honestly anyway. And so I don't think this is the way to approach it. Number one, I think if you're going to have a committee, try to get some people that's actually in the business and put up ideas to where, you can work around it, not just somebody that's sitting behind a desk saying, well, if I get this law passed, I can make more money by selling my place because of the medallions. I had a couple of people talk about them medallions. If you're only going to allow 150 of them in the harbor, then in one way it does great for me when I can turn around and say, yeah, I got 50 of them things. You just made me worth a hell of a lot more money. Excuse my French. Is it fair? I don't think it's fair. So I think you need to really look, and if you're going to get a committee together, get all the businesses together to come and say, okay, this is how it's got to be, and this is what we need to do instead of just making laws. And then besides that, where it's going to stop. Because if you're going to do it with a pontoon, next thing you do it is a chair in a restaurant. And I know both of y'all got restaurants. And then how many times during the middle of the season, busy weekends, y'all bring extra staff in and put more chairs and tables in there? I know it. I was in the restaurant business. I do it. So I mean that's part of it. And then another thing it's all got to do with parking. Who determines how many people you put on a pontoon boat? Just because of the thing it says 16, just because they got a number on the boat that says 16, it's individual families. You're not getting like a dolphin cruise boat where you have 150 passenger dolphin cruise boat that they might have 50 different families that's each coming in a car. I sit up there every day and watch cars come in, Suburbans, and everybody's piled into the car with all that stuff. And so the city's saying you need 4 cars. When in reality, everybody comes in 1 car, 2 cars. So it doesn't make any sense whatsoever where they came up with the number. And that's something else. It should be looked at ahead of time. So I'm asking you all to really think about what you're getting ready to do and where is it going to stop? Because today is jet skis, today and tomorrow is jet skis. How about the people at Holiday Isle that's got boats out of their backyard? They ain't going to get medallions. I know people all around Holiday Isle right now that's running businesses out of their house. They ain't getting in trouble for it. So you're going to pick about 10 businesses that's actually paying tax and doing it legally and screw them up, and then everybody else is going to be underneath the radar. And just remember, what you start today is going to come to y'all tomorrow about something else with other seating problems. So I'm just asking you to really think before you pass this law.
Mayor, can I ask him a question?
Yes, if you don't mind.
Do you mind if I ask a
Go
question?
ahead.
I'm just curious as to your thoughts. If we were able to issue medallions that had a registration number on there that was non-transferable and would prevent the selling and the black market, medallion market, so to speak, would that change your opinion?
I really don't understand. Well, so in other words, let's say you issue me 50 medallions. Okay.
And they're numbered 1 through 50.
I'm definitely the largest in the city, definitely without a doubt. You issue me 50 medallions, and not only one, you say it's $500 a piece. Well, look at that amount of money I got to come up with every year. I'm already paying so much. And what are they going to be, $10? Or are they going to be $500? Who's going to set the amount of the price? So then, you issued me 50 medallions, and I could say, well, you know what? I can charge $5,000. You know, is it legal? Well, if I bought it just like a liquor license, they sell liquor licenses all the time, and people sell them, and they just keep going up. Is that, you know?
I guess what I'm saying is if let's say you did decide to sell yours and they're non-transferable, and then code enforcement's checking someone and they show number 49, which is supposed to be you, then obviously they're being fined or whatever we decide to do because that wasn't issued to them. It was issued to you and you weren't supposed to sell it. So the idea being we're preventing people from selling them to try to make money off of them.
Well, then you're preventing somebody from selling their business also. So why should I build up a business for a quarter century, get to be a certain age, I can say, okay, I got enough of it, and then I can't sell it? Well, then, I mean, you just cut me off at the knees. Why you even want to start, you know? Would you want that done to your business? Most people make money by selling businesses. They work all their life, they build up a good business, and they sell it. And they make lots of money, and they retire. So, are you just...
No, good points, and that's why I wanted to ask you and just sort of get your insight. So thank you.
But I would love to be on that board that y'all, you know, that y'all pull out, about y'all, not pull, y'all make, to voice my opinion about it.
The meetings are open to everybody. Their CRA board meets, every once a month? They're open.
Yeah, this came out last week, and I actually found out about it, and I was out of town. And then some of the stuff that, it was my fault for not being there, you know, but I think it's going in definitely the wrong direction. Definitely. So thank you all tonight. I appreciate it.
I don't believe we've done a motion on this yet. Would council like to make? Anyone else?
I motion to direct staff to
Please, anything that was already discussed, just tell us you agree with it.
My name is Mike Avity.
and
I
come on
live
to
at
it.
4010 Lauren Court in Destin. Along with Charles, I've been in this business for 26 years. We started in 1990. He had a business, I had a business. I rented some of the first jet skis on Destin Harbor before there was even a no-wake zone in Destin Harbor. So we go back a long ways. We've got a lot of history with the city. Several years ago, I'm not going to repeat a lot of the things that Charles said, but I can confirm a lot of the things he said. Several years ago, I applied to put some docks in behind my business. I had to go through DEP. We also had to get certain permits from the city of Destin. Had several meetings in this council room, getting my permits, getting everything I needed. We were scrutinized. We had to meet certain requirements. We had to have certain amount of parking spaces. We had to have certain amount of boat slips. They came and counted my boats. They counted my boat slips. They counted my parking spaces. Everything had to gel. Everything had to match. Okay? So I had to meet a lot of rules and regulations for the city of Destin. Now y'all telling me that people are coming into Destin with boats and wave runners at all. They don't have parking spaces. They don't have boat slips. They don't have licensing. They don't have... I've been following rules and regulations for 25 years, guys and ladies. And now you're telling me there's people that are coming to town that don't have to follow these rules and regulations. So now you're telling me the good have to suffer for the bad. You're going to implement some new rules, some new laws, some new rules and regulations, some new fees. And I can understand a fee. You want to sell me a sticker? I'm not talking about a medallion, because medallion, ma'am, I don't know what you're going to do with a medallion. I'm going to hang it from my side of my boat that somebody can steal or swap. A good sticker? Sell me a sticker? What's a sticker cost? Now, unless y'all used to work for the Pentagon and y'all want to charge me $250, $500 for a sticker, I'll buy stickers for $5 all day. You want to sell me a $5, $10 sticker? I'll put it on my boat so code enforcement can look at it and regulate me and see who I am and how many boats I have. I don't have a problem with that. But if I have 40 boats and I gotta pay $500 a sticker, guys, that's $20,000. I don't know which one of y'all, what kind of businesses you guys are in, but if I come and the city would come and put a fee of $20,000 on your business every year, I don't think you'd appreciate it. I think we pay a lot of taxes. I've been paying taxes here. I own property here. I pay property tax on my business, on the harbor, on my homes that I have in Destin. I've been paying property tax. I've been paying every license, every fee. We're regulated by the city. We're regulated by the county. We're regulated by the state. I already pay. When we pay this, it used to be the occupational license. Now I'll call it the tax receipt, business tax receipt. On my form, if any of you would go into the office back there and look, on my form and in my file, there's how many boats I own, how many boats I have, how many boats I'm allowed, how many pontoon boats I'm allowed, how many jet skis I'm allowed. That's all, I'm already regulated there. I can't have more than what's on my list that's regulated by the city. I have to carry a certain amount of insurance. I have certain rules and regulations I have to follow. If you made every business along the harbor follow the same rules and regulations that I've been following for 25 years, and that Charles has been following for 25 years, I think you'd eliminate the problem. If there's people here with boats that are unlicensed, unpermitted, don't have insurance, don't have parking permits, the rules are already there, guys. All you got to do is enforce them. Part of what I'm learning here is that, well, we don't have the money to enforce it. Guys, we pay our taxes already. You're trying to say, well, we want you to pay more taxes so we can hire another code enforcement officer. I've been paying my taxes for 25 years. If whoever's on the council has been misusing that money over the years, I'm sorry. You know what I'm saying? That whoever, if you're not, but you got so many code enforcement officers, they should be able to enforce the rules that's already on the books. Believe me, I could do that job in a month. One day a week, you send a code enforcement guy around, he can go to every business along that harbor. Do you have parking? Do you have how many slips do you have? How many parking spaces do you have? How many boats do you have? It's not rocket science. You know what I'm saying? It's a pretty simple way to do it. It's the way I've been regulated over the last 25 years. It's the rules I had to follow. I don't see why somebody should all of a sudden the good have to suffer for the bad. You want to get rid of the bad? Understand. At this time, I would also like to volunteer my services, as Charles did. If they have a CRA board, if you guys have meetings, if staff has meetings to draw up rules and regulations for this, I volunteer free of charge my service to come and sit with council, sit with staff, sit with anybody necessary to give our input into this situation so that we don't get taxed out the yin-yang. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Mayor, what was that gentleman's name? Did you have it down?
No, I didn't. I'm sorry. What was your name again, please, sir?
Mike Abbey, A-B-A-D-I-E.
Mike Abbey. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, and I'll get to the motion. My biggest concern is we do have a lack of enforcement, and I think you see water sport rental companies having more boats than they should. We have very little recourse over a company if they're permitted for 12 pontoon boats, 12 jet skis. If they have 20 and 20, we have very little recourse. We do have a lack of code enforcement. But we have these rules and regulations, and he was right. When we issue their business tax receipts, we tell them how many boats and how many jet skis they can have. And that's my biggest concern, is making sure that we have the ability to effectively enforce that and make sure that they're sticking to their permitted number of vessels. And we did have a discussion with Scott Shirley about these unlicensed vendors that are just kind of renting out of the back of their house. And that's a really difficult challenge to tackle in terms of the medallions or extra permits. There are certainly pros and cons to it, but my biggest concern is making sure that we're effectively able to enforce our codes we already have on the books. And I know we're not doing that with some companies. And it's not fair to the companies that are doing things the right way. I just want to level the playing field. So, with that said, do we need a motion? I motion to direct staff to evaluate the administrative feasibility and legality of proposed actions regarding the additional regulation of rental vessels, to evaluate ways to improve enforcement of business tax receipts and parking regulations, and report back to the City Council.
Second.
We have a motion, second, discussion. Start with Mr. Foreman.
I was going to second.
Ms. Ramshaw.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it correct my understanding that at this time, we're not voting for an amount or a medallion versus a sticker? It's simply to look into the issue, correct?
That is correct. Further discussion? Mr. Marler.
If these gentlemen that came forward contact staff, will staff talk to them and at least try to get some of the suggestions they have, and let's see what we come up with?
Yes, actually, I was hoping that I would be able to get the names and telephone numbers of those two gentlemen. I would be very interested in sitting down with them and having staff at the table and getting their ideas, as well as bringing back Mr. Ed Robertson. I think that he was the one who gave the presentation at the CRA Advisory Committee meeting. So I think it would be very beneficial for us to have those three business owners at the table as we go forward with discussion.
I would actually include anybody that is paying their business tax license that is legitimately working on the harbor, as Mr. Morgan said, so that we make sure we get input from the good people, the ones that are actually doing what we ask them to do, and then ways that we can, I hate to say self-police or self-enforcement, because that doesn't always work. I think the city should make sure that we have that way, and I guess when we get into the budget, we'll be talking about the harbor master.
Certainly, enforcement is definitely tied to this, but we can look at the two separately. We don't have to include the, put it this way, we can discuss funding for an additional code enforcement person separately from creating the system that's going to help to regulate. I think that we want to make sure that we have the system that works first, and then discuss how we're going to enforce that.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. An unanimous yes vote. Item 19, Environmental Parks and Recreations Committee, Tree Board recommendations.
Yes, sir. I'm going to ask Mr. Lance Johnson, Director of Parks and Recreation, to report on this, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. It's good to be here. It's good to finally be up to bat. As was previously discussed, the tree board met last Tuesday, and they accepted the challenge to go forward with a long-term solution to our tree cutting and our saving our tree canopy in Destin. But they had concerns beyond that, and they had some short-term concerns. So a motion was made to recommend to y'all for consideration a short-term fix for that. And we have the chair of our committee here, Ms. Teresa.
I'm Teresa Abear. I'm the chairwoman for the super committee, the Parks, Recreation, and Tree Committee. And we would like to suggest to the council if you could do an immediate moratorium for the next 90 days until the regulation ordinance is put into place after it's been decided on how it needs to be written. But that'll preclude any of the developments that are being looked into right now and having any trees being cut and removed prior to the ordinance being put in place. So our goal this evening is just to ask you to vote on an immediate moratorium on any tree cutting until we have the ordinance in place that precludes anything being done that's not approved by the city.
I'll make that motion unless we have further commentary from city manager.
Can you give us, yeah, go ahead and make a specific motion.
May I have a comment? It needs to be an instruction to the staff to bring back. Moratoriums are ordinances.
I have the recommended motion right here, if,
It wasn't what you stated, so I just wanted to make sure you're using the recommended motion. That wasn't what the speaker stated.
Oh, okay. I'll go ahead and make the recommended motion. I move to direct the city manager to take the actions required to bring back an ordinance that imposes a temporary moratorium on the removal and pruning of protected trees within the Destin city limits.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, and I'm sorry, I've already hit the voting button. Can you reset us back to discussion? Mr. Clerk? Ray, can you set us back to discussion?
Excuse me, Mayor?
Yes.
While they're working on the technology, would we be able to, within the moratorium, have some sort of exception language? And I really don't know what this would look like, but my only concern is while we're in hurricane season for these next 90 days, if someone needs to do some sort of pruning to prepare their property for a strong wind event, I just want to make sure that we're not going to prohibit someone from pruning back if they have to, take off a limb or something because they're worried of a hurricane coming through.
I would suggest it's going to have to be a lot more extensive than that. You're going to need to, before you put a moratorium in, you're going to have to know what kind of trees you're not going to freeze every tree in the city. You need size, you need types of trees, I would think. Obviously, you need exceptions for storms or hurricane damage, and also you're going to have to establish penalties. You can put a moratorium in, but if there's no penalty to cut down the tree,
We can cut down all the palm
it's not going to do
trees.
any good. And if you're going to put a bounty on cutting down palm trees, I don't think you're going to be able to put together a moratorium. You might as well write the ordinance. It's going to take us long.
Oops, sorry. I'd prefer to not alter the recommended motion or direction, and let me just explain why. Would it not be possible if we found ourselves in an emergency situation such as what you discussed to then make an emergency motion to release the moratorium? Would that not be easier?
I would have to defer to the city attorney, ma'am.
Mr. Shirley is very talented. Let's presume that he's going to do the work correctly. I think you're trying to wordsmith what he's going to need to do for you to bring back, and he's already worked on that. So you're straining at gnats right now. Let him do his job. A removal of the moratorium will also be an ordinance process, though, to answer that subsequent timing issue. But let him do his job for you.
Mr. Marler?
Yeah, I'm kind of with the city manager on one thing, but I'm on a different thing. Time to time, I think it should be on a case-by-case basis during the moratorium, because time to time you will find that when people are renewing their homeowner's insurance, they will be required to remove a tree that might be, the insurance company says it has to go or they won't be able to insure you. You also have other trees and roots and stuff that will start compromising, if they're too close to the house, compromise the foundation. So I think it should be, the moratorium at least should have a case-by-case basis in some way during that time, because I mean, plus it's going to be hard to enforce if you can't go in somebody's backyard without a viable reason. If they cut down a tree in their backyard and you didn't see it, and you see the stuff by the side of the road, it's going to be an after-the-fact thing. But there should be something in there during the moratorium for insurance or, something of that nature.
If I can step in for just a second, the key word is the protected trees, and what the staff wants to do is put together the definition of the protected trees and bring it back to you for your approval in the ordinance. And in the moratorium, we can have a specific group of protected trees that will be in the moratorium, and we'll bring it back to you to decide if that's the right group or not.
I hate to break in the middle, but I think we have to change tape. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. We're going to have to break for 10 minutes to change the tape.
No, you got 10 minutes.
Oh, 10 minutes left. I'm sorry. Okay. Mr. Marner.
I'm sorry.
You're done? Mr. Foreman.
Yeah, I understand the term protected trees. I've got a landscaping outfit that comes in and does the tree pruning for me in my yard and does a pretty good job of it. And they know pretty much what it's to get rid of overgrowth, things like that. You've got popcorn trees that show up overnight. You've got cherry laurels. You've got a whole bunch of trees that come in there. And the average homeowner, I might be a little better educated on that sort of thing than most people. I'm making fun of myself right now. But the fact is, there's some trees that I don't know one from the other. I know it's in the wrong place. And so, as a homeowner, I think we might be overreaching on code enforcement on some of these things, in this particular one. And I really believe in the goals you've set, but I think we need to take our time and do it right and make sure that we've got to put a moratorium in place. You've got all these landscaping outfits out here, and what are we supposed to tell them? You can't do your job anymore?
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, I think a big portion of this, it's like the moratorium on the food trucks. A lot of the tree cutting in Destin is unpermitted anyways, and that's one of the reasons why we're revising the tree ordinance to put in stiffer penalties for people who cut down trees illegally. But I do think a big portion of our tree removal is done off the books of the city. So, I don't know how effective this will be. I think if you look on the agenda item, Mr. Marler, your concern about insurance companies, it is listed on the agenda item. So Scott Shirley does have that direction for hazardous trees, dead trees, trees that the insurance company are asking you to remove. So that will be included in the language with Mr. Shirley. I'm going to support this with the end goal of getting a stronger tree ordinance and actually being able to effectively find people who cut down these protected trees without proper permitting.
Any further discussion? Councilmember Dixon.
I'm sorry, I had to run to the restroom, but I could hear most of what's going on inside there, but whenever you were talking about development, were you talking about development of the rule or the language? I did hear you say basically no development. I just want to make sure that we're not doing something to where if somebody is going to build a home, that because we enact this, they can't cut a tree down to be able to build a house. Was that the intent or anything like that?
No, and the ordinance will come back to you for approval, so you'll see the ordinance before it's enacted.
All right, and then my next question or comment is that, I don't know about the pruning. I think the pruning is, in my opinion, I'm not a tree expert, but in some cases it's good for trees. So I don't know about the pruning of trees, and I think we're overreaching with that. So if it's like that, I don't know if I'd be able to support, not being able to prune a tree. And I don't know if I can support that. So.
Mr. Marner.
I've forgotten one thing. The city manager and I had talked the other day. When we were talking about Gulf Power and their little ways of cutting trees, I think we discussed that they actually are above our ordinances.
That is correct. Nothing that the council would do here tonight or in the future with the tree ordinance, to my knowledge, as it was explained to me, would prohibit the Gulf Power Company from taking down any tree or pruning back any tree that they deemed was interfering with their electrical wires.
Well, I'm kind of like Mr. Dixon on that. I'm not happy with that because of what they did on 4th Street, but, I mean, it's like we make an ordinance and one of the biggest violators is going to be the person that we can't control.
Councilmember Dixon.
I was one of the biggest proponents of this, and I still am, in the fact that we have, and I was more looking at for ourselves personally is what we were basically ripping trees out on the right-of-ways for power wires or power lines or whatever it may be. I think what was done on 4th Street was basically, we really didn't know what that was going to look like. We didn't know what was going to be done there, but what we did was we ripped out some beautiful oak trees and put up some of the awfulest looking 40, 50-foot power poles, and I know they're not got to have them. But I think what we were looking at when we went down this road to begin with was the fact that we basically kind of did that to ourselves. And, I don't know that we were looking at actually people pruning trees on their property. If a tree branch breaks down, and you got to be able to cut it off. So I could support this if we took the pruning out and to make sure that we're not doing anything that would basically stop somebody from building a home if they had to cut down a tree to build a home. So.
Yeah.
You've got companies out here that are in business to do exactly what we're saying you can't do anymore.
Councilmember Ramsel, would you want to amend your motion to exclude the pruning?
I can definitely do that. So do I now offer a substitute motion, or do I just amend the original motion? I think I just amend. Is that correct?
Well, you made the motion, so you withdraw it and make the new motion you intend.
Okay, I withdraw my original motion and would then replace it with one that says, I move to direct the city manager to take the actions required to bring back an ordinance that imposes a temporary moratorium on the removal of protected trees within the Destin city limits.
Okay, and I will point out, protected trees, I'm sorry. Second?
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, we have Mr. Dixon up. You have the floor. Or did you want to just second? Okay, Mr. Morgan.
I would like to get this in ordinance form before we start nitpicking it. And let's wait to get Mr. Shirley back here too, and I would urge y'all to vote on this so we can get it in ordinance form in front of us and then have most of this discussion.
Excuse me, Mayor, could we interrupt for a moment? They have to change the tape.
Go ahead.
I know, but that's different.
We'll start back in 1 minute. Call the council meeting back to order, please. Councilmember Braden.
Yeah, I'm good, Mayor, thank you.
I'm not showing any further discussion. We have a motion. We have a second. I'll call for the vote. We have 1 no, 6 yes. City manager, comments?
Yes, sir. At a previous meeting, I was directed to bring back for discussion a list of the different projects that we had within the city, all infrastructure projects that at this point were unfunded in this year's budget and in next year's draft budget. I've asked Mr. David Campbell, our Public Services Director, to put together that list. He has divided it up by categories, put it in very, simple, easy-to-read format, either a template matrix or a graph for the council to review. I'm going to go ahead and let Mr. Campbell go ahead and just kind of briefly describe the different documents that were provided for you in the backup materials.
The first document I'd like to talk about is the facility maintenance projected costs. This is something that we keep ongoing. Every year we have inspections. We identify issues with our facilities, older infrastructure, just things that absolutely need to be done here. And we do have some aging facilities. And what I tried to do was break this up into the next 5 years and then in the 10-year. And based on my discussions with our field staff, that to the best of their ability, we've put these things in what we feel like need to be taken care of in the next 5 years. I think over the past years, especially over the past 7 or 8 years, we've had to, because of budget constraints, to push these things from year to year to year to year. And what that does, obviously our facilities are getting older, so the costs increase the longer we put these off. If you have any specific questions, for these facility items, I'd be happy to answer them. But what I think is interesting, each year we budget a similar amount. As you can see in FY17, we budgeted $50,000 essentially, and we've done that over the past few years. When in reality, our maintenance needs are increasing every year. For instance, the items that I identified in 2018 add up to $186,000. These are some things that we really need to start considering funding before they get away from us. Does anyone have any questions on the maintenance?
I do.
Facility maintenance. Okay.
I have a question. I know that we had gone to the TDC and asked for money because there were improvements and repairs and maintenance that they funded for public parks. I'm wondering, I see on here Mattie Kelly Park replaced fishing pier, and seawall. I'm wondering how many of these things are items that we could perhaps go to the TDC for?
From what I understand, that the TDC is funding our parks along the beach and not necessarily our interior parks.
Right, I guess my question is, if they do similar parks of this nature in other locations within the TDC jurisdiction, is this not something we could ask for? Maybe those that have served on that committee have a better insight than I.
As you may or may not remember, the TDC is currently funding about $400,000 in infrastructure cost for all of our beach accesses and whatnot. We did submit originally a year ago with our first request some maintenance at some of these other parks, Clement Taylor and whatnot, and they specifically turned those down because they were not tourism related or driven. And I agree that would be a good thing to ask for, and we can certainly ask to see if they would help us cover some of those costs, but they primarily are funding any of the beach accesses or parks that are purely tourism driven and tourism used. So, it's not certainly something we can always ask for, but just keep in mind they will probably decline those only because they're not really tourism driven.
Okay, we can certainly keep it in mind.
Councilmember Dixon.
I was just going to say that and I don't know, it could be coming out of BP money, but the Veterans Park that they're building next to the conference center, which is basically in the intercoastal waterway there, I think that the TDC is going to probably spend some money on that. So I may be wrong on that. No, all BP?
No,
Yeah.
that's a county park, but they're basically, it's not in this year's TDC.
Well, they're going to develop the park, and I don't know.
Yeah, at some point.
Yeah, and it is not on the beach.
Let me just comment on some of this stuff here.
Go
For one thing, the timing is a little bit off right now because the budget is already just about fixed for this year, as far as this year. As for the situation of requesting, yes, you can. And I'll be glad to present it to the TDC in the near future or whenever it's appropriate. But as a general rule, I think they have provided us with significant money on the beach accesses and also those areas there. We did get reimbursement on the dredging. And we got 60% of what we requested on that, which was a significant amount. So they're loosening up somewhat. They're getting a little bit better at it in terms of defining what is permissible and what is not permissible. But because of the past there, they've been very cautious about offering anything that wasn't properly supported. So I think we probably could go ahead and request it.
Thanks. I'll refrain from embarking on a TDC discussion right now, but I do note that, for example, the seawall repair is for year 18, and the fishing pier repair is 2019, so those would be for subsequent budget cycles. So, thanks.
Councilmember Morgan.
Is the community center the public services building? The public services building on your spreadsheet, is that?
Work other than some of the failing infrastructure that we currently have. You see the third bar of needed, these
I
idle
don't see
commons.
the community center on here.
The community center is not on here. I don't have those numbers. I didn't have those numbers readily available, and typically Lisa Firth.
Yeah, sure. But they are getting some money?
As far as in this year's budget, I would say yes.
Okay.
They have that major AC issue, correct?
And that's complete. And, pardon? Right. Yeah, we spent a lot of money on a new roof, and on the community center and a little over 100,000 on the new AC just last year.
You want to continue with your presentation?
The other exhibits I have here for our infrastructure in our right-of-way, and the first one that we see here is the stormwater. We were extremely fortunate over the last 2 years to